please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We are just finishing an executive session for the purpose of discussing strategy with respect to litigation regarding 362 Middlesex Avenue. And before we begin tonight's meeting, I just wanted to start with some sad news. As many of you are aware, recently we did lose a big part of our community. Joe Costello Sr. passed away on Thursday, September 26, while performing his duties at Wilmington High School. Joe was a dedicated town employee for several years and took his job very serious. In fact, it's my understanding on the day that he died, his wife Tracy suggested that he stay home because he wasn't feeling well, but Joe, being Joe, refused and went to work and did his job like he always did. That's how seriously Joe took his job, and it's just the type of guy that he was. More importantly, Joe was a loving son, brother, husband, father, uncle, friend, and Bampy that we should all aspire to be. I was privileged to know Joe personally, and I was proud to call him my friend. I, like many others in this community, will miss him dearly. So on behalf of this entire board, our administration, and the entire town of Wilmington, we want to send our deepest condolences to Tracy and the entire Costello family, and our condolences to the men and women of the Public Buildings Department who also mourn his loss. So if you would, please join me in a moment of silence as we pay tribute to a valued employee, a loving family man, and a truly wonderful person in Mr. Joe Costello Sr. Thank you. And as many of you know, out of respect for Joe, we canceled our last scheduled meeting so we could mourn Joe's loss, and we will have more information about a makeup date later on in tonight's meeting. So thank you for that. I want to thank all my colleagues and the administration, including Jeff and Beverly, for wearing pink tonight, an article of pink, in honor of Breast Cancer Awareness Month. We have transmitting of Treasury warrants 13, 13A, 14, 14A, 14B, 14C, 15, and 15A. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Motion's been made and second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you. We have two sets of minutes to approve, one from May 28th of 2019 and the other from August 7th of 2019. Is there a motion?
Motion to accept.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Motion's been made and second. Is there any discussion?
Is this on both of them, or are you doing one at a time?
I'm happy to take them up either way.
Okay.
I
didn't
make a
know.
motion, I thought that's what you were doing, was you?
Sure.
I make a motion to accept the minutes of May 28th, 2019, and August 7th of 2019 as well.
Thank you. Does your second stand?
Second for both, yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
We've got a motion and a second for both sets of minutes. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you. So we will move right into our 7 o'clock appointment. And it is a request to obtain a common vicular license for the property located at 35 Lowell Street. And so we are, it's the doing business as Lynn Garden. Anybody here from Lynn Garden? Hi, welcome. Would you like to come up?
Well, I think some do the mistake, and we don't do the liquor license. No liquor license right now.
Right, this is just for a common victual.
victual
Yeah,
license.
Right,
all right,
right.
yes.
If you don't mind introducing yourself for the record?
I'm Hualin is the Howling's assistant. So the restaurant is under my brother's name. but
Okay, this is your brother here?
Yes.
Okay, welcome to both of you.
Thank you.
So you come before us looking to obtain a common victual license for the Lynn Garden.
Yes.
And so maybe you want to talk to us a little bit about what's going on over there?
All right, the Lynn Garden, we had the takeout restaurant, so we provide for the Chinese food, Chinese Asian food, and hopefully we can good food served for everyone.
Okay. Jeff, you have some?
So I do have recommendations. This request has been reviewed by the Health Department. Shelley Newhouse, the Health Director, notes, I recommend approval of the application for common victualer's license submitted by Ho Lin on behalf of Zhong Hao Inc., DBA Lin Garden, located at 35 Lowell Street. Also, the building inspector reviewed the request. After review, the application submitted by Ho Lin on behalf of Zhong Hao Inc., DBA Lin Garden for a common victualer's license, I find no zoning or building code violations.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments?
I'd be happy to make a motion when the time comes, just to let folks know. This is the old Jasmine Cuisine restaurant that's located in the Colonial Park Mall. And I have to say that I went over there about a few days ago. As you can tell, I like to eat a little bit. I had a little takeout. I got to say, give you a nice little plug. It was outstanding. You did a great job. The food was excellent.
Thank
And
you.
the family thought it was very, very good. So I just thought I'd mention. That way people know where the location is.
Thank you.
Give you a little bit of a plug, okay?
Any other comments or questions from board members? Okay. Okay, we'll call for the vote. Anybody like to make a motion?
I'd make a motion, Mr. Chairman, to grant the common victual license as described by the town manager.
Motion's been made, thank you.
Second it.
Seconded by Mrs. O'Mahony. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? It is unanimous. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Okay,
So you can stop in the office tomorrow or call the office and pick up the license tomorrow.
Thank you.
Okay, best of luck to you folks.
Thank you so much.
thank you.
Thank-
Okay, we are moving right along. We're just a few minutes ahead of time. Our second appointment is with Mr. Sani, the secretary of the restaurant doing business as Michael's Place, with the request to obtain entertainment license for the property located at 110 Lowell Street.
Mr. Chairman, if I could, thank you. I'd like to recuse myself. Obviously, there's a financial interest, so Bev, I'm going to leave the room at 7:07, and if somebody could be so kind, knock on the door, get me, and record the time coming in, so, thank you. I just need a second. Okay, thank you.
Please.
Hi everyone, my name is Jaspreet Singh Sani. I'm secretary of the corporation over there, and I'm as a manager running the Michael Place right now.
So, good evening to you. Thank you
Good
for being
evening.
here. So, Mr. Sani, am I saying that correct?
Yeah,
Yes, so you're in charge over there right now?
yes, person of in charge, yeah.
Okay. And so you're here to seek an entertainment license because you have a jukebox, is that
Yes.
correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Do we have recommendations, Mr. Hall?
Yes, I have a recommendation from the Chief of Police, Joseph Desmond. Upon review, the Wilmington Police Department recommends approval for an entertainment license submitted by Jasbar Sani on behalf of Michael's Place, 110 Lowell Street. Also, this has been reviewed by the Deputy Fire Chief, William Kavanaugh. I have reviewed the application for the entertainment license at Michael's Place and have no objection to its approval by the board. And then finally, it's been reviewed by the building inspector. There are no building code issues regarding the entertainment license application for an above-referenced entity per the building inspector.
Okay. Thank you. Are there any comments or questions from the board?
Nope.
Okay. Seeing none, we'll call for the vote. Would anybody like to make a motion?
Make a motion to approve the entertainment license?
Thank you, Mr. Eden. The motion's been made. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Motion's been made in second. Thank you. Is there discussion? Seeing none. All in favor? We have 4, none opposed, and 1 abstain. Okay, congratulations, thank you very much,
Thank you,
and
everyone.
best of luck to you.
Thank you very much. Well, can I come tomorrow pick it up or?
Yes. Yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
Best of luck to you, take care.
2 places to sign.
2 places to sign, okay? Okay.
Can you let Mike know, there's one other document that he has to pass over to Kevin?
Sure. Yeah, there's one other, this one is from the first appointment,
Okay, here
and
it
the
is.
second one, yeah. So you folks are welcome to stay, but from our friends from the Lynn Garden, you may. You're certainly welcome to stay if you'd like, but, all right.
It's gonna be here at midnight if you wanna bring a little something back.
Thank you, Mr. Eaton. Okay. So we're gonna give, so they're gonna pass on this one, that's right. Okay, so, okay. So we, again, are just a bit ahead of schedule, but I see that our next appointment is already present. We'll give him a moment to come forward. We want to welcome Mr. Paul Cardello here, who's the chairman of iPods for Wounded Veterans, with a big announcement for an event coming up at the State House. Mr. Cardello, good evening.
How you doing?
Very well, how are you?
Evening, everybody.
Good.
Paul, don't feel so bad, I gotta do that once in a while, push my
Yeah,
table
I
up, man.
Yeah, these hips,
I hear you.
artificial hips, they get stiff once in a while.
Take your time.
My name is Paul Goodell. I've been a resident of Wilmington since 1975. And it's been a long time. I'm still here. And Jim Maselli was like my first person I ever met. He was like my mentor, my crazy ideas. And if you don't know Jim, well, you think it's too big. He says, no, you got to think bigger. It's always small. You're not thinking big enough. So on January 1st of 2011, we started iPods for Wounded Veterans. It's a 501c nonprofit. We have no paid employees at all. And I, de facto, wasn't the chairman, but he was the chairman of the board, okay? Now, I know Mike McCoy and Joe Marie, he would call him between 11:30 and 1:30 at night. And he would schedule appointments, if you could believe that. And it would take 2 rings and he would pick up a phone. And, you know, so we had to get a Class A security clearance. If you don't know what that is, to go into Walter Reed, it's 7 pages for one person, just one. And he pulled somebody from his campaign, and Nancy Cadigan, and that's how it started. So we've made 23 trips to Washington in the last 8 years. And we're going back May 7th through the 10th of 2020. So it got along, one thing led to the other. In October of 2015, we had an event at the State House he put together, you know, with the Bedford VA, and we brought veterans in. And, you know, it really went good. Kevin was there with his son. He saw the whole thing. And it really went good. So, unfortunately, you know, everybody knows Mr. Sully passed away suddenly. And people have been asking me, you know, what do I want to do? I did about 50 TV shows with him. I was going to put a highlight reel together. And then we got a call from the State House. They said, well, why don't we incorporate the veterans in this? And one thing led to other. His aide, David, our new state rep, David Robertson, who was there from the beginning with iPods. You know, so he knew all about it. He says, why don't we do this tribute to Jim? I says, well, you know, I says, it was difficult the last time, but, you know, this one's gonna be a lot bigger. So I got called in a meeting. We've been working on this since August 3rd. So we have 4 organizations involved in this. iPods, State of Massachusetts, the VA healthcare system in the city of Boston. Now, for the people out there don't know how big the VA healthcare system is of Boston, it's Plymouth, Brockton, West Roxbury, Jamaica Plain, and Lowell. That's the VA healthcare system. Now, if you add the city of Boston, everybody knows this, it's an unbelievable amount of veterans in the city of Boston. So we put together this mini committee, feasible study, whether we could do this, or if not. And then we went to, the state came back and said, well, you know what? It's a regional event, and it should be a state event, because we're using the State House, and we want as many veterans there as we can. All right, so now we gotta go back to the drawing board, what we can do here. And it became a state event. This is a state event in honor of Jim Maselli, across the state. So veterans are coming in from Leeds, North Shore, Brockton, Plymouth, and it came together, and a lot of people have worked in this. Unfortunately, they're laying water pipe at the State House to make things difficult on top of that. So the state police got involved in this, and we have buses that are being escorted by the state police. And the veterans are gonna get dropped off right in front of the State House. And they're gonna have escorts up to Memorial Hall, and they'll be all dressed up with military flags. And, and that came about, and we have a logistic problem. Where are we gonna put the buses? We can't leave them on Beacon Street there. So they contacted the Navy Yard, and they're gonna put the buses to stage down there. And then call back when the event is over. So we kept on planning on this, and one thing led to another, and everybody got involved. And it's more about Jim's legacy at the State House. I don't think this could happen, without any other rep, really, honest. When I met Jeff in the hallway, I said to him, what representative do we know has 2 bridges named after him? There's not many, right? There's not many at all, if you look into it. So the State House got involved, the Secretary of State got involved, the Governor's office got involved, Lieutenant Governors got involved. So it's all come to we're 17 days away, and it's all come together. It's gonna happen. And we expect minimum 90 to 150. I'll be shocked if it may be even more. And the thing is, if you know Jim, he always used to bring high school students in there. So we contacted the high schools that we were working. We have 4 high schools that are going in for this event. We have Wilmington High, Tewksbury High, Malden Catholic, and St. Sebastian's. They're all going in with the administrators and bringing students into this event. So the students at Wilmington High and St. Thomas, they're making 150 packages for the veterans this Saturday in Wilmington at Burlington Self-Storage, these gift bags. The schools have donated using 60 and 85 toiletry bags. They're gonna go to the veterans. As you notice, we see Terry there. She's hiding in the back like she always does in the last row from the senior center. The seniors quilting department will say, we started with 5 in 2011, now we have 32. They made blankets and knitted hats. And we have a bracelet division. They made 100 bracelets, red, white, and blue bracelets that we're gonna give out. We give these out to the amputee section in the traumatic brain injury unit. They wear them at Walter Reed and Fort Belvoir. And so, of course, like you people, you have budgets. This is not in our budget. We have no money. We're at 0 balance, and we're headed to the red real fast. So in 2016, Jim Maselli and David went up to Bose Corporation, met the directors of Bose Corporation, We had a presentation to them, what it means for the veterans to get electronics and stuff like that. And the gentleman, the head of the military division, his name is Ed Colazzo, United States Army Lieutenant Colonel. And he called me when Jim passed away, and he says, well, if you ever need boats to help you out, if you're gonna do something, let me know. So the VA called, and I went there probably the third week in August. I made a presentation to them. Is it feasible? Do you have it in your budget? And like 72 hours later, they approved it. So we got the ball rolling. You know, that was the big one. And then we've been calling our sponsors, what do you think? Because he knew all our sponsors. He used to talk to them all the time. And, you know, one thing led to another. And we went from not having any sponsors to now we have like 10 sponsors. We're about 70% there. We're trying to get 100 more military baseball hats, about another $1,000, $1,200. You get 100 more of them. So it's like this community bonded together. You know, we've been kind of like under the radar. This is our first like public announcement of what's going on. So we have the senior center doing their thing. We have the students at Wilmington High School. We have this teacher named Dawn Mantel. She won the Teacher of the Year award, the first teacher from the Daughters of the American Revolution from Wilmington High School for military assistance to our injured veterans and veterans, you know, in Massachusetts, United States. And she spearheaded the drive to raise money for the toiletry bags. And she's making a scroll, and all those students at Wilmington High are gonna sign it so they can see it at the State House. So it's a collaborative effort. We have people at Tewksbury that are helping us out, and then we have Billerica. We called their senior center, and they're knitting stuff too. And Disabled American Veterans chapter from Billerica, they're bringing veterans in. So it's a final rush here. This is my third meeting today. I got dumped to do the public relations, so I've been at Teamster Local 170 this morning, Bose Corporation this afternoon. I'm here tonight. But it doesn't work. You know, we have a community that knows about iPods. You know, we've been at this a long time, in 8 years. You know, and he was like the spearhead. He was the one that when you always get in trouble, you have to call him how we would proceed, you know, with the rules down in Washington. So that's what happened. A lot of people have got involved in this. You know, we can't thank the state police and, you know, for their assistance because, you know, mainly with veteran safety is our first concern. Of course, all of that. And I see the Wilmington Police there, and Dave told me the Wilmington Police and Tewksbury Police Honor Guard are gonna be at this event. That's what they told me, so hopefully we'll have that. But, you know, it's about Jim's legacy. That's what I could say to you, you know. And the response has been tremendous. You know, I can't believe it, but a lot of people have worked on it. It's gonna happen. All I can tell you, it's gonna happen. Public is invited. It's a work day, I know that. 8 of my board of directors went, you know, I says, well, there's no way we can do it. But 6 of them took the day off because they knew what he meant to our program. There is no iPods for wounded veterans without him, bottom line. And so, you know, our name speaks for itself now. And I just want to, you know, I just can't thank all the people. We had an idea. We never thought we'd be, you know, that it would evolve to this. So 2.5 years ago, we started a national program. We do major events across the United States. We've been in Veterans Administration in Phoenix and Tucson, Orlando and Tampa, and Richmond, Virginia, Petersburg, Virginia, Fort Belvoir, and Walter Reed. And that's what happened. And we have Medal of Honor sponsors. They've been with us for almost 8 years. And I just want to recognize, you know, Kevin last year, van driver got sick. And I says, Kevin, you want to go down and meet the assisted veterans? You know, that have housing problems down at Brockton. and he drove the van down there, and he met him, and we had a lot of one-on-one time. You know, and he met a couple of amputees there and stuff like that. Just a funny story, somebody brought him, the amputee, some socks, and he made a joke out of it, and we all started laughing, you know, so it was really great, because we had like 25 minutes to each veteran to speak to them, and so that happened, and so the past August 24th of this year, we took on the entire New England healthcare system, all 6 states, and Joe Marie O'Mahony was at our final event in Brockton. We had 168 September 21st. She also was at our biggest event at Leeds Northampton Hospital. We had 200 there. It was bigger than Walter Reed. It was incredible. It was so big we had to have it in the parking lot, if you can believe it. But it's a body work of all the people that worked hard in this behind the scenes. And we just been keep going, and it's just kind of proud that I live here, because we have local heroes and we have iPods in the same town. It's not many towns like this. You have 2 organizations that do stuff for veterans. So it's all coming together, and we're here, and it's about Jim. It's not about iPods. This is about Jim Maselli in the State House, and, you know, what he's done. I just want to have a couple of things so I get in our public record here. I just want to show, you know, how we evolved here. I just thought I'm doing show and tell here, so just bear with me for a minute. Yeah. So, we started out with iPods, you know, just going on that. But, you know, what electronic has evolved in years, right? So now we're dealing with paraplegic and you know, amputees and brain injury. So, this is the thing, the Echo Dock and the home Google voice commands for the amputees, this is what they like the most. All right, so this is the newest thing that we give out. And Kevin's group from last year's donation, the Wilmington Sons of Italy is a Medal of Honor sponsor. They donated 22 Amazon Fire 7, and we have 3 of them. We give it out at the State House that we have left from last year's donation. And also, Joe Marie O'Mahony, right here, she made a personal donation to the group. We have 48 World War II embroidered hats with special water bottles, went to the New Hampshire Veterans Home. And we had a chance to see 44 World War II veterans. We don't see that many of them. The most at Walter Reed was 20. And there was 44 up at Tilton, New Hampshire. And it's an incredible experience. It's like a PBS type documentary. Just put the recorder in and listen to the stories. It was incredible. So, done a lot of different things. That's one of our highlights. And just one other thing I think we have here. We have it here. We got Red Sox Foundation. They're giving out bracelets, and Joe Marie got the Bruins. Bruins are donating an autograph for hockey puck and stuff like that. So we've gone a long way, and this is like a signature event, and this is the official flyer. I know I gave everybody that, and I just want to say this is a picture of the World War II veterans. Between 93 and 97 years old, right here. So, one thing led to another, and I'm a retired Teamsters at a national office out of Washington, D.C. I started the Teamsters Military Assistant Program, where you apply online for a veteran applies online, and they will pay for your driver's school training and your driving Class A test. if you qualify. It's a new program, so we're promoting that on that, so. We've done seeing that, all the help. I'm on a national podcast next week for the Teamsters going across the United States. And then I'm on WRKO October 31st on the Jeff Cooner Show, a live radio broadcast, and they're gonna be at the event, and they're gonna interview like 10 veterans for the show leading up. We're the first event up at the State House up to Veterans Day, you know, November 1st. I know I gave you a press release, and I wanna read this. I'm gonna close on this, right? iPods Wounded Veterans would like to acknowledge the following 3 selectmen, Mike McCoy, Kevin Kyron, Joe Marie F.O. Mahoney, for their contributions to iPods Wounded Veterans since January 1st, 2011. Mike McCoy with his donations to purchase iPods. Kevin Kyra, Sons of Italy Medal of Honor sponsor of Wilmington. We purchased 22 Amazon 7 Fire tablets that we distribute to the New England healthcare system. We have one Wilmington donated money to purchase 48 World War II baseball hats, 171 water bottles for the World War II Veterans Home in Tilton, New Hampshire, and also U.S. Navy, U.S. Marine baseball hats for the November 1st event at the State House. Without these donations, these events would not have been possible. In closing, we'd like to thank all the people that have contributed to make this event possible, and also on the first press release. In coordinating effort with our Bose Corporation, sponsors with Bose Corporation, Hudson RPM News, U-Haul, Local Heroes Club of Wilmington, Basel Senior Center, and the Billerica Council of Agents, we distribute gift bags to all the attending veterans, electronics, and other items. So we have Lieutenant Governor's going to speak, the Adjutant General's going to speak. We believe somebody from Mayor Walsh may speak from his office. David Henke, the Outreach Coordinator from the VA Healthcare System, is going to speak. And we have Linda Dean Campbell. She is from Methuen. She is going to be the Master of Ceremonies, and she's the Chairwoman of Veterans and Federal Affairs for the state. And that's about it. But we're there, and it's going to happen. And like I say, it doesn't happen unless the people support something like this. And I can't thank enough. It's kind of like, you know, Kevin knows and Joe Marie knows. She knows. She's seen it. And it's, they're hurting, and somebody's got to help them. And we're, you know, me and like Lou, what he does, you know, we're the ones that try to help as many as you can. So it's public invited. I know it's a work day, but if you want to come to the State House, it's gonna happen, you know. So like I say, I can't thank everybody enough. I just want to close on this because I haven't even said this. Everybody knows Cornell University. That they donated 120 refurbished laptops in the last 7 years. And we're giving 2 of them out, and St. Sebastian School has donated 2 refurbished laptops, and we're giving them out as the grand prizes. So we're just doing this final fundraising squeeze here, and that's it. And I should mention Joe Marie's mother. She had a fundraiser at one of her coffee socials, and she raised $200 and bought United States Army and Air Force baseball hats for this event. Like, we're 100 hats short, so we're working on that. But that's it. Any questions, feel free to ask me about veterans or anything like this.
Well, Paul, thank you very much, certainly, for your presentation and being here. And I know you so eloquently said that it's ultimately a team effort, but we thank you for your help in organizing this, and we also thank you for your service as a veteran yourself. We really appreciate that, but it sounds like this will be a fitting tribute. We want to make sure we repeat that the date is Friday, November 1st of this year, from 1:30 p.m. to 3:30 p.m. at Memorial Hall at our State House in Boston. And so we want to make sure we'll plug that again at the end, but I
Yeah.
want to give the opportunity for my colleagues to make comment or ask questions. Mr. McCoy.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, Paul, you're an asset to the town, you're an asset to the state, and you're an asset to the nation as a whole. You're all over the country, not only you, but your organization, but obviously you're the face of that right now. I think you're a class act, a gentleman, and I think it's a wonderful tribute, what you're doing to my uncle, to the State House, and, you know, it's for iPods for wounded veterans, you know, and you're a champion yourself, Paul. Thank you.
Well, like I say, couldn't, we started an idea, couldn't do a start, you, Kevin, Joe Marie, we're all in this together, you know what I mean, we're all in this together. They need our help, we gotta help them out. That's the bottom line.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sure.
So, yeah, Paul, it's been quite an experience, traveling down, visiting with the veterans, and I thank you for that opportunity. Thank you for the recognition on behalf of the Sons of Italy as well.
Yeah.
I commend you and your board of directors for all the good work you do across the nation, because I know we talk frequently
Yeah.
about the different events that you do out in Arizona and Virginia and here in Massachusetts. So you ought to be commended for what you do and for all of the joy that you bring the veterans. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Eaton.
Mr. Cadell, I do want to echo some of the comments of my colleagues in thanking you for your dedication. Almost 9 years now, and this is your third meeting of the day, so your endurance is certainly inspiring, and your heart's in the right place, and I commend you for your dedication to helping out those who've served us. So thank you again, and I think this will be a great event.
Thank you.
So Paul already knows this. I'm the daughter of a veteran, the daughter-in-law of a veteran, and the wife of a veteran. I started volunteering with Paul last year in honor of Rep. Maselli's memory, because I knew how important this was to him. And in the past year, I've gotten really close to Paul. He's not someone that can be ignored. He's definitely tenacious in his endeavors to get this done. He does it, with the biggest of hearts. And it's more important than that I was at Leeds and I was at Brockton. It was that my high school kids were with me. My children were with me. And I would have to say there's no better way to show them the meaning of thank you for your service than to have them shaking hands with 200 veterans and actually sitting down with Paul's brother at the last event and hearing stories of his days of service. Unfortunately, both, my father's passed away, so they don't hear those stories, of the Korean War. But they got to hear them that day from other veterans. And there's no better way for them to understand the ultimate sacrifice that so many of our service people give. And it's not just in their lives, it's also in their life-altering injuries. And I think, some people get thrown by iPods for wounded veterans, the title. But, an Amazon Echo is kind of a convenience to most of us, but it's a necessity for an amputee to be able to utilize. So I really appreciate how he's expanded the breadth of the electronics that they're giving. I was going to do this in the hallway, but my mother's group, Massachusetts Retirees United, did do a collection because we are trying to raise enough money to get the rest of the baseball hats. You'd be amazed when we give a veteran a hat, a patriotic hat, a hat saying what war they served in. Just they stand up a little straighter, and they appreciate that you're willing to recognize them in that manner, and that you really, truly appreciate it. So I appreciate you giving us that opportunity to do it.
Well, I just want to end on this note, that we don't have any paid employees. There's no paid employees since we've been doing this. And we have 8 board of directors, 6 of them have gone to Washington 17 times. Usually when a board of director, 1 or 2, not 17. And on our board of directors, we have 2 medical people. We have different, being a businessman, 2 medical people, physical therapist, and we go to the Spinal Cord Institute in Virginia, and we see the worst of the worst 2 weeks off the battlefield. And that's why we go to Washington, to see the most severely injured. So, but our name precedes us, Ralph, right? When I go to Washington, this town in Massachusetts between local heroes and this one town has two organizations like this. I hear it all the time. You know, I'm just great that we have the support in the community, you know, and like Kevin's organization, Joe Marie's, you know, they experience it. You know, Kevin got, I don't know, multiple calls from Virginia and Fort Belvoir and Walter Reed, people thanking him for what we've done. So, that's it. That's my spiel, and I talk too much, and everybody wants to leave now. I'm done.
Not at all.
You know, while I have the police, I really want to thank them for the honor guard, and, you know, David and Casey Fussell and David Robson really have put the heart and soul into this, and we want to do Jim right. I'm sure he'll be smiling when this event takes place, and like I said, it's about him. It's not about us. We're doing this. If anyone deserved a tribute, it was him. So thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Paul, and we really
my
appreciate
TV
you.
crew over there, were with me for 25 years, and good to see them. And,
Sports run out.
you know, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank
One
Jeff.
last time, we want to
Good
make
thing
sure
I
we
came in
plug.
to fill out my veterans papers when I saw you.
Thank you, Paul. One more time, we want to plug the event for you. We know it'll be a fitting tribute, and obviously, we hope it'll be well-attended. It is Friday, November 1st, from 1:30 to 3:30 p.m. at Memorial Hall at the State House, 24 Beacon Street in Boston. And again, it's a State House salute to veterans in honor of the late State Representative James Maselli. So we hope many will attend, and we wish you well. Thank you very much, Paul. We appreciate you being here.
If anybody wants to get hold of me, looking to come to the event, I'll give them more information. Go on our website, and if you're looking to make a donation, my number's 978-658-8743. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you. Best of luck. All right, Paul, you're a tough act to follow, but I think these next two gentlemen are up to the task, I hope.
Thank you, Bob. It is my pink item.
Here you go. Thanks again, Paul.
Thank you.
Our next appointment is with Patrolman Dan Furbush and Michael Cabral from the Wilmington Police Department, here to talk to us about a new program which they're heading up, the Wilmington Police Explorer Program. So we want to welcome you. Also, Chief Desmond is in attendance. So, Chief, I was going to say welcome, young men, and I saw you approach. But we're delighted to have you guys here, and know you put a lot of work into this. So please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to, I promised them I would introduce them to everyone, so they wouldn't have to come up here by themselves for the first time. But obviously, this is a passion of both Mike and Dan's. They brought it to me, probably almost 6 months ago, I guess at this point. We're always looking for opportunities to reach out to the community. And again, they have real passion about it. They really sold it to me. It's their baby, and they've done a great job. And they like to take the opportunity to explain it, exactly what the program is and what we want to do with it in the future.
Hello, guys. So this has been going on for several months. I'd say even longer, where Officer Cabral and I have done a lot of research. Not only online, we've gone to other departments that have had similar programs. We've actually gone to trips to other police departments that have these programs. And essentially what it is, it's almost like a junior cadet program. One of the biggest things, obviously, with the Wilmington Police Department, and they've been working really hard on it, is to try to get the community more involved with the police department. It's important for that, obviously, for one reason, is because without the support of the community, it's hard to do what we do. It's a very hard and stressful job, And it's good to have the community backing, and the best way to do that is to kind of get them involved so they can see what we're going to do. One of the best ways we do it already is like the community, the Citizens Police Academy. So we want to try to do something similar that's geared more towards the juveniles of town. The Wilmington Police Department had a Wilmington Police Explorer post back in the 70s and 80s. Most of the officers who might have participated in that are no longer with this department, but based on what I heard, it was a great program that the town had. It was very popular with the kids, and due to financial issues that was big during that time, not with just Wilmington, but all over the Commonwealth, it was one of those programs that was kind of just tossed aside. So the Police Explorers in general is huge out in the West Coast and is slowly making its way back. I had Officer Cabral join in with this, and the goal was to try to bring this kind of a program here to the town of Wilmington. We're kind of a pioneer. There's not a lot of towns around here that has it. So essentially what it is, we're bringing in kids ages 14 to the age of 21 is when they age out. And we bring them into the police department. We have meetings 2 times a month that we start in October and we go all the way to June. And the first part of the first meeting that we generally have is more of a classroom. It gives the kids an opportunity to learn criminal law, motor vehicle law, constitutional law. We'll have individuals from other police agencies, whether it's local, county, federal, state, come in and do either demonstrations or educate the kids on what it is to be in law enforcement in general, not just a police officer, but corrections courts, lawyer, police department, state police, county, DEA, whatever the person that comes in has to offer. The second meeting of the month is what we call our PT day. So we'll have the kids go out. They actually have to exercise. Some of our crack officers will be out there running with them. And what it's like basically when you go in the police academy, I mean, you have to run. I had to run 10 miles at one point. You're doing sit-ups, push-ups, all that other stuff. We're also going to be doing outside demonstrations, whether it's building searches, whether it's motor vehicle stops, whether it's community policing. And then after June, during the summer, we hope to have them come out and join the department and assist with programs such as the 4th of July, National Night Out. We plan on having a community project that we want to get these kids involved with, whether it's to help the DPW clean up a park or go on the community board and see what some of the issues that the public has, whether it's the grass growing on the side of Main Street or such, and get them involved, because it's really important as a police officer that we be part of the community. And it's not just arresting people and making motor vehicle stops. And you're a pillar of the community. You have to represent the town, and you have to give back to the town. And we're here to service the town. So whatever the town needs from us, we need to be able to perform. So it's a way to teach these kids basically what it's like to be a Wilmington police officer.
Great, sounds like a fantastic program. How many, you already started, my understanding, right?
That is correct.
How many people in the group?
Currently,
Yeah.
we have 21 children right now with 11 certified instructors.
Great. Well, we really appreciate you taking this on, and again, another fine example of Chief, your department going above and beyond the call of duty here, as you mentioned, outside of traffic stops, and you can just add it to the list of things that you guys do, including a National Night Out and so many different things, but from the beach day, it could go on, but it's really a tribute to you two who have taken this on, and I think that a lot of kids will benefit it, and ultimately the entire community will benefit from it. So I thank you for that. Thank you. Any of my colleagues like to make comment?
Yeah,
Mr.
no, I
Kyra?
just, I'm impressed with 21 kids already. When I heard the physical therapy requirements or the phys ed requirements of 10 miles and what, I'm glad I aged out a while ago. But no, congratulations. This is a great opportunity for the young folks in town to get involved and to learn about policing and criminal justice. So kudos to you for what you're doing in the community. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to echo my colleagues, I think it's a wonderful program. You're reaching out to the youth of the community. What's the age again now? From what age to what age? I don't think I
14
heard.
and the age out at 21.
14 to 21. I think I've been living in town a long time. I remember being an auxiliary police officer. I graduated, went to criminal justice. I understand what you're doing, and I think it's just wonderful that you reach out to the young kids and to show them that, you know, true blue, and you care about the town, and you're there to work with the kids, and it's a great program. Thank you.
Street.
Just briefly, I applaud the initiative by both of you and the chief for another really initiative to strengthen the partnership between the police department and the community. I really think that that's very important, and I'm glad that you guys have really taken the bull by the horns, so to speak, to try and to reach out to kids as they're, some are going through difficult times, but you're really showing that the police department is, a trustworthy resource, and also for some, I'm sure, possible career path. So I think job well done, and keep up the good work.
So my day job is as an attorney for the Department of Children and Families. As you guys probably already know, I'm in Lowell Juvenile Court way too much, so I really appreciate the outreach that you're doing for kids. Especially, I know some of the kids in the program, and they're really good kids, so I love the fact that you're already encouraging them and giving them the opportunity to learn about this as a possible career path. I think that's wonderful. So good job engaging the community in that manner, and let us know what we can do to help build the program and support it.
We'd like to thank you guys for your support. We already had a meeting with the town manager, Mr. Hall, and he showed his support. So we'd like to thank Chief Desmond. He was originally a lieutenant when this first started, and he guided us all the way now that he's chief. And I can't ignore the school department too. This program is actually required to have a good working relationship with the school department and the superintendent. So we've already been in contact with him to make sure that we have a good partnership with them as well. So I want to thank everyone for letting us come up here.
Mr. Hull?
I just want to echo the comments that have been previously made. Certainly in this environment that we're in, unfortunately, the police across the country are under incredible scrutiny. In many cases, don't enjoy the same level of trust that perhaps they did in generations past. And I think this effort, amongst others, is a way to restore, in our case, I think retain that level of trust and integrating into the community. So I want to compliment both Officers Cabral and Furbush for taking this on, and for the chief certainly in terms of assisting and guiding the process.
Absolutely. My final question is if, I understand 21 individuals already involved. What about if somebody else wanted to get involved? How could they find out more information? If they're watching tonight and they're thinking, this might be something for me, stay tuned, reach out to you guys, what would it?
So we have, the Wilmington Police Facebook page has our applications available on there. There's also the Wilmington Police Explorers Facebook page. You can also email us at explorers@wpd.org, and that goes to me and Officer Furbush. One of us will get back to somebody. We have applications also at this police station that are available as well.
Great. So we would encourage everybody, if you know somebody who wants to get involved, to reach out to these two gentlemen and certainly do that. And then will there be some type of graduation or type of ceremony when they complete the program, or?
So we're working on it right now. Obviously, it's our first year, but we want to do something special for the kids in June. Give them certificates, give out awards, make the kids feel special every year, even though we'll have a lot of kids that will return the following year. But it's just something to give them a little gratitude for all their hard work for the year.
Absolutely. I know you'll let us know about that. We'd even love to have them come in here,
Absolutely.
Nothing says a celebration like room 9. But seriously, thank you very much, gentlemen. I think Jeff alluded to it, but just my observation, I can only imagine, but it seems like it's a difficult time in our country to be a police officer, and your department chief has great respect in this community, and it's certainly some of the things we see on TV is not the case here, and it's because of officers like you who take on projects like this that we have such a great relationship our community with our police department, so we thank you for this, and we wish you
Thank
well.
you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, and good luck.
Thank you.
Okay. I think I saw her come in, there she is.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, next up, we have an appointment with Ms. Colleen O'Brien, who's the General Manager of RMLD, and a discussion regarding the purchase of property for a power substation.
So, Mr. Chair, perhaps if I can just introduce this.
Please.
There was a, I'm sorry, what was the request?
Is there a
Sure.
PowerPoint you'd like to show?
Oh, okay.
Uh,
Yeah, if you,
is that
yeah,
possible?
You want to take a quick recess? Get them set up.
just maybe a couple minutes.
Yeah, Mr. Eaton brings up a good suggestion, if you'd like to maybe make a motion to recess.
Yeah, I'll make a
for-
motion for a quick recess to allow our guests to set up their PowerPoint.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? It's unanimous. We'll take a quick recess and we'll be right back. Okay, we're back from commercial break. Thank you to Beverly and others for helping us get that set up. And we'll be back. We'll open up our open session here again this evening, and we are on to our next appointment with our friends from RMLD. We have a PowerPoint.
Yes,
Thank you very much
thank
for
you,
being
and good
here.
evening. Thanks for having us. Colleen O'Brien, General Manager, Hamid Jafari, Director of Engineering and Operations. We're here tonight, and before, I just have a couple of slides to show you, but we're here more in a public appeal for a hardship that we're having. We have a substation that is in Wilmington, Wildwood Substation. Although not all of Wilmington is served by that substation. We have feeders that come in from other substations in Reading, in North Reading as well. In some of your load growth areas, we are lacking some capacity, so we're always switching the feeders around to make sure that everybody stays in power. The Wildwood Substation is at its end of its useful life. We've got to the point where we've done as much maintenance as we can, and it's just done. That substation is in a environmentally sensitive area, meaning wetlands. It doesn't provide us enough space in order to, as Hamid puts it, do like a bypass surgery. You can't build one in parallel with the one there. There's not physically enough room. So we've spent the last 3 years as part of our reliability plan looking for a piece of land in and around the Ballardville area, which would be centrally located in order to redistribute all the feeders within the service territory. It's just not that easy to find some land that sits pretty much right under the 115,000 volt transmission lines. So we found a piece of land up on Route 125 that was listed as being owned by National Grid. So we've spent the last 2 years in negotiations back and forth with them doing appraisals, us doing appraisals, to the point where we got to a letter of intent. After we got to the letter of intent, we progressed with what they allowed an environmental phase 1 testing. We paid for the title search and all those type of things, and just before we were getting to a purchase and sales, the title search showed that that land did not belong to National Grid. It belongs to the town of Wilmington. So I can send Jeff these slides. We put them together fairly quick. Wasn't quite sure if we were going to be here tonight. As I said, the equipment's aged, compromised. The new substation would be called Substation 6. The new substation not only needs to be located near the transmission lines, but it should be centrally located where all of the growth is coming in. And by doing that, we can actually, in that Mass 125 area, not only be able to feed the growth areas, but also be able to redistribute the other substations that are feeding North Reading and Reading, so that everything is balanced, because right now we're constantly struggling with the balance. A new substation eliminates the critical situation of a failing substation and potential rolling blackouts. The reason for that is because the way this was designed many years ago, and I want to venture to guess that it's probably 40, 50 years old or more, They don't wire, it's not wired in a configuration that's standard, so you can't even if it was to fail, we can't just call a mobile substation unit company and say, hey, can we roll these in? Albeit that could be 50 grand a month, but you can't even get them. And that's one of the critical problems. So that's not a standard wiring configuration. So that we were absolutely sure, and, you know, Hamid and I are, we have some longevity in electrical engineering. We figured we'd hire a third party just to double check all of our analysis. And third party PLM, or Power Line Management Group, came in and they did a summary report of the condition of the substation, and it coincides with our assessment. And I've given Jeff a copy of that and can give anybody else that's looking for that. The new substation will significantly improve reliability, provides load relief again for Station 4, which also feeds our largest customer, which is Analog. The limited backup through the partial capacity from substation 3 and 4 we've already spoken about. This was why kind of putting these drawings together today was kind of important. As you can see at the top here, this piece of land right in here was 3 acres of land that was supposedly owned by National Grid. And it had to do with the 1938 deed in which it was sold to National Grid. And then when Route 125 came through, there was some eminent domain taking. But they only owned the land that's pretty much underneath their lines. These yellow lines are the substation, and they owned a corner of this these auto condos that are up here and across the street. So Grid just owns in here. So this piece right in here, actually, it's this line right here on the assessors that was incorrect. That's actually, the line is up here. So this ended up being all of the town of Wilmington. So for those year and a half that we've been negotiating with National Grid, was setting the substation microgrid into this block right here. All right? So that's kind of where the problem was in the assessor line that came back with the title search. So without that line, that doesn't really exist, there's approximately 8 acres of buildable land. The RMLD required, when we first went with National Grid, approximately 3 acres of buildable land with access transmission to the Grid 115 lines and access to Mass 125. The point of the 3 acres was not only to just put a substation in, but was also to build a microgrid similar that we have in North Reading, which is essentially a battery backup system. We can shred the peak when the cost is much higher with the electric, and also have battery storage, potentially a solar or something, maybe can be combined with anything maybe the town might want to build. So that microgrid system is something very big that the state is trying to help all the towns and the utilities get into. It also provides a sense of resiliency, improves capacity, and there's certainly cost benefits. The first option that you see is I'm just going to take you through a couple of visual layouts of where we were working with National Grid. And again, that line doesn't exist in here, so this would just be laid out here. And what the RMLD would like to do is, you know, if the town was going to use this type of land, we actually have access granted to us from, and I'll get into that in a second, from the Highway Department in order to install this. This was what we had worked with through National Grid, and Hamid was able to shore up those conversations. So we could come in and maybe, stub out a driveway going into this land that seems to be locked. So that's one configuration, substation, microgrid being.
Just to be clear, when you say
Yeah.
Highway Department, you're talking about Mass
Mass
Highways,
Highway.
Mass DOT.
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you.
Sorry. So it's just one configuration, and this microgrid is the substation, and then you'd have some battery packs or something like that. And if you haven't had an opportunity to see our battery storage, 5 megawatt battery storage in North Reading, it's that type of small microgrid system. This is just another layout. Those were the this is the layout that we worked with National Grid, but since the land is a little bit more versatile and trying to design it such that, you know, so the other land could be accessed and used. We had this as an option. And then this is a third one. Now, the engineers put this together. I would always want to have a substation. I don't think anybody wants to be right next to 115,000 volt transmission lines, but this actually puts a buildable lot or an area for the town in front of it. It's just to show the versatility that we're willing to do. This would cost us more money because we would be having to extend you know, the easements over to tap into the transmission lines a little bit further, but we're willing to look at all options. This is actually a substation with a brand-new wooden gate system that's we took from Peabody Light Department, so it's just kind of a visual of what we would envision is looking like, and then we would beautify the front of it so you would probably not even see it. As I stated before, this is some of the due diligence with National Grid. We had the letter of intent signed. They started the title search. They allowed us to do the phase 1 environmental. The title search showed that the parcel was not owned by Grid, but the town of Wilmington. Assessors line across the parcel drawn does not match the 1938-39 deeds. The environmental testing, the phase 1 was performed by Cushing, Jamal, and Wheeler. We also did a non-invasive geophysical survey, who was performed by Hager Geoscience Incorporated. And then the Mass DOT discussions with town approval, substation getaway poles that would leave the substation, come out onto 125, and go in both directions. The left would go to Ballardvale, the right would go towards Andover Street to feed capacity. And then with town approval, they would authorize a curb cut on Mass 125. The conclusions, improve electrical reliability, added capacity for electrical load growth, not only the existing in Ballardvale that we're having a bit of a hard time with, also attract business to the areas. That's your economic development, but you know we've always supported that, wherever you want to go in that direction, but we won't be restricted. You know what I mean? We were doing the maintenance on the existing substation and Target was moving in. It was very, very stressful because the substation was not in great shape. And at that time, Hamid and I had just gotten hired, so assessing and fixing things was quite a challenge because of the amount of activity that was happening in the Target area. Same types of things are happening in the analog area. So switching out all of that and redistributing is gonna be really, really important. Reduction in power costs. By building this new system, new substation, you lower system losses, and the microgrid is obviously used to offset high power costs, peak shredding, and resiliency, as I said. Benefits related to future town projects. With a substation nearby, because there's no electricity in that area, the town could avoid a cost in excess of $100,000 to install poles and overhead lines for any type of electrical service to this site. So we'll be right there, and all the lines will be coming in. And so if you wanted to develop that area, all of those costs to run all new poles and lines and everything would all be part of us being, you know, tucked up right underneath the transmission. So that's the presentation. Thank you for setting this up. Thank you. I think the pictures were worth 1,000 words, so I'm glad we got to show them. I hope that they helped to visualize it. So,
Well, thank you very much
that's
for your
where we are.
presentation. Thank you for the presentation.
Sure.
We appreciate you being here. I'm sure there are quite a few questions. I want to start with the manager, though. I know he might have some input.
Yes, so just to describe some of the process that took place before this evening. So George Hooper and I met with Hamid and Colleen a couple weeks ago, I guess it was, to talk about this piece of property. There has been a considerable amount of back and forth, I think, in terms of trying to ascertain who owns the property. Bill Holt, the deputy engineer in our office, did some work on his own and looked at the history there, and as it turns out, as Colleen described, the parcel in the northern section, it was not as originally depicted on the assessor's map. And so as a consequence, a piece of property that we believed to be owned by a National Grid, and turns out is owned by the town. This piece of property was acquired in 1938 by the Water Department, for protection of the Browns Crossing well field. So it is, from what we've gathered based upon conversations with council, Article 97 property, which means that in order to convey any portion of it or to develop any portion of it, there would be a requirement that both houses of the legislature would have to act, and I believe it's a supermajority, if I recall, and also the governor would have to sign it, and then whatever property is conveyed for that purpose, a similar piece of property would have to be identified and essentially replace the piece that was being given up. So there are some amount of hurdles, along with, of course, the getting access from Mass DOT to put an entrance on off of 125, because that is a limited access highway. But certainly, as was described, I think if between Analog and the development in North Wilmington, it doesn't sound like we can continue to rely upon a very outdated Wildwood station.
Thank you. I want to give my opportunity for my colleagues to ask questions. Mr. McCoy?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd be remiss if I didn't say a few months back, when the manager was reading this, there was a possibility that the town would own it. I think I said something like timeout. I mean, if we own it, we should grab it. We're looking, in my colleague here, we're working in the managers to put a hockey rink somewhere, and we're looking for town-owned property. And I understand the situation you're in. So you're saying there's 8 buildable acres of property. How much do you really need out there in those 8 acres? And you said that you could maybe shift what you need in the back. How much property do you really need to do this?
Well, I don't think that we can build the substation for much less than like an acre and a half. That would be the minimum. We had looked at some property elsewhere in Wilmington, but it was so small. The only way to exit the property was underground, and that added a significant amount of money, and it was extremely restricted. That's why this property was it was located perfectly. It was located in an area that was central to where the load growth is happening, and central also to us to be able to redistribute the feeders coming out of the other substations. So that would probably be the minimum, but we had originally wanted to put a microgrid here. That's something that the state is pushing for. They want batteries, they want resiliencies for town, they want backup, they want clean renewable energy. So I don't know if you're envisioning maybe a solar on top of your ice skating rink, but we can certainly tie it into the substation, something like that. But all I was envisioning was similar to North Reading, where we may have a small generator and a battery in order to be able to feed in case there was an issue, and also to shred the peak during high cost to try to keep the cost down to all of our customers.
And just one more quick thing, Mr. Chairman. You said because the Analog put somewhat of a strain on the system, from what you're saying, is, well, you need to be directly underneath the high tension wires? Is that a
You gotta be in
plus?
pretty close proximity because, well, one, the transmission company isn't gonna give you an easement that extends, miles away. So, and you have load losses and things like that. So you wanna be in fairly close proximity to tapping the 115 lines. They also don't really allow you to tap anywhere where you want to tap. That was part of the 1.5 year negotiation with them. They have to view this as a benefit, a win-win. This becomes a junction point on their transmission loop. So you can't just tap anywhere. It has to be, strategically placed and agreed and run through there. We spent a lot of time again, on this site, going through those, just being able to tap onto that, you know, even if it was your land, it still got through that authorization process for it being a point of contact with the transmission facility.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think that's something that we should really talk about and really negotiate, because we're definitely interested in that acreage. And one more quick thing, is there any overhead wires at the analog property? Because I know the building out there, is any overhead wires out in that area that you could actually build this transformer out in the industrial park?
You mean on the analog site?
Well, I'm saying is maybe we can talk to Analog, maybe there's a few acres that they could give to do the substation. Maybe I'm wrong, maybe there are, I can't recall if there are overhead wires in that area. Are there in that area? I think there are,
Yes,
yeah.
there are wires, but those are the low voltage wires. Basically, like what Colin mentioned, we need to tap off the 115 kV lines. And
It's
the
not in that
115
area?
kV lines, they're behind the FedEx. And again, to get an easement and bring underground from there, it's very difficult. And even if, let's say, we build the substation there, to bring the lines to support the voltage all the way to Ballardvale, it's quite a challenge. So the reason that this is strategically, like what Colin mentioned, it's a really perfect site, it's because the load growth is in Ballardvale area, and for those businesses, the reliability and having power, you know, it's a key to their business.
I think
So-
if we could work something out, I mean, I think that would be something that would be desirable. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Kyra?
Mr. Chair, is this substation strictly for Wilmington use, or is it for other communities?
It's gonna be serving majority of the, Wilmington area. But we're gonna be using, it's also gonna be tying to the other substation, North Reading and Reading, just in case. And this is how all over the country, this is how they do. The substations, they tie to one another, so in case they're down, they can, support one another.
So right now, the
transfer the needed.
substation in Reading actually is the one that feeds analog.
Analog, right.
So we want to redistribute
Right.
the loading, because they're completely loaded.
Right.
And this, by rebuilding this, it takes some of the load off of Station 4 in Reading that's feeding analog and redistributes it so it's balanced. You know what I mean? So that when you look at the service territory, if you can envision like 3-4 main substations that are, I don't want to say triangulated because there's 4 of them, but essentially that's what you're trying to do. So that in storms and things like that, you have some contingencies between the substation so that you can make sure that you can get the most people back in power the quickest. And when you have blockages where you have capacities that they're overloaded, it makes it very difficult. And when you lose lines and stuff, we just don't have the backup in order to bring it in. So this substation is definitely part of the long-term reliability plan. And like I said, this is at the 11th hour, them telling us they don't own it. So it's quite interesting. But yeah, we went for 3 acres. We could probably go down to 1.5 acres. We would not have any microgrid system or anything. It would just be a substation.
But with the microgrid portion, you need more than 1.5 acres.
Yeah, like I said, if you haven't seen the one at North Reading, the battery systems are like the size of like a Massport container. That's what the batteries look like, so you would need like 2 for 5 megawatts. So you would picture a substation, and then you'd need clearance, and then you'd put that box in, and then clearance in another box, and that's what it would look like.
And that's more preferable.
Well, I think, I would think it would be more preferable for the town as well. Having a microgrid and resiliency and a battery backup it's something that the state's pushing, it's something that a lot of towns can't have it. They don't have the facilities to do it, the places to put something like that. But I think we're hoping to get more grants to be able to at least put a battery in. The one in North Reading, we were the first ones to get $1 million grant to build that battery. We don't own the battery, it's owned by Nextera. We used $1 million to offset the lease and the cost to the customers. But it was the largest grant in the state that we received 1.5 years ago. So I would assume there'll be more grants coming down.
And what happens to the Wildwood facility? Does that get dismantled and taken apart and moved? It's just not gonna sit there as an eyesore if it's no longer in use.
We're gonna be using that as a switching station,
As a
so
what?
as a switching station, so we can switch feeders.
So it's still gonna
But,
be utilized?
Yeah, it's gonna be
Because you said it's
utilized.
coming to the
Right.
end of its useful life.
Yeah.
But it's not now.
Well,
it's now okay.
It is pretty much close. It's, you know,
It won't be a substation anymore. He's
Yeah.
just gonna use that area to put a switch in,
Okay.
just a switch. A substation has transformers and circuit breakers and relays. This is just gonna be a switching station, so that you could take one feeder and disconnect it from this feeder and put it onto
Transfer
this
it to
feeder in case of a storm or something. So it just becomes just a large couple of sets of switches.
Yeah, just a quick commentary, it's Article 97, land, you said, so and you have to find other land to compensate for the land we're taking here. It has to go through a pretty extensive process, so this may not work out in the end anyway, so. But I also know that there's a fire substation that we're looking for in that area, as well as I know my colleague brought up a rink, so we'll have to see if that's 8 acres of buildable land, how it works out.
that would be like what
Mr.
Colin mentioned, I'm sorry. This is a perfect site to power up the, either police station or fire station, because as it is, if you wanna energize that, if you have building anything, any facilities in this area, it's gonna cost approximately $100,000 for the town, so we can set the poles and power up the building. So, but having the substation right there, like what Colin mentioned, we can just come out of the station, it's right there. And it could feed.
Can I add a comment, Mr. Chairman?
Please.
I understand it's Article 97, and I've been doing a lot of research. I don't have an answer yet, but this could be viewed as a public hardship, as I started the meeting. I can't say that a hockey rink is a public hardship, but this is a public hardship. And so we're looking into so that we can provide to you additional information about whether or not restrictions could be lifted or not as strict. Certainly, if you wanted to try to do a combined effort, that's why I think that's why I was mentioning the solar or something. How could we combine a public hardship with something, that maybe could become part of the microgrid system? Something that, the state and the governor, because it was Charlie Baker who gave me the $1 million grant for the other microgrid system. Maybe the state would be interested in helping to support that type of collaborative effort, supporting both the public hardship as well as a facility that might be able to house solar or something. I don't know if there's too many trees to have solar there, but it's just, right now, I'm just trying to get the creative juices going because we're really concerned about the state of the existing substation.
Mr. Holmes, you have another comment?
I just wanted to ask Colleen if you could perhaps talk a little bit more about the microgrid. So based upon the conversation that we had a couple of weeks ago, is my understanding that aside from the reliability piece, which certainly would seem to me very important, we don't want businesses, having brownouts, or residents for that matter, because of the power situation. But as I understood it, that this microgrid would assist us with rates. And if you could possibly talk a little bit about that, that the rates are set based upon the peak demand. So if there's an ability through this microgrid system to reduce that peak, then
Right.
that helps the rates for
Right.
everybody.
So, most people's electric bills are socialized, meaning that, we trade power, it's a commodity. It changes price all day long. And so the rates are socialized so that, everyone has a standard rate. The time of use rate is a little bit, it has two different sections in that so that you can get a better price if you were to use a lot of your power after 7 o'clock at night. But in the real world, the pricing is going up and down at the grid level, and we're trying to lock in those prices. We have an annual peak that's typically in the summer, and that's a capacity peak, and then we have a monthly peak of a transmission peak. When we call those peaks on our Twitter, and the ISO grid says tomorrow's gonna be a peak, and it's coincident with our peak, if we're able to reduce demand at that time, then how much we reduce power during that peak is an offset to everyone's bill. So we've calculated that last year alone, we saved over $400,000 by running that battery microgrid at the North Reading station. Now, that's a value to everyone, not just North Reading. It goes across to all of our customers in all 4 service territories. So this is what those help to do, because essentially what you're doing is you're taking power at low cost, you'd be saving it to the battery, and then you disperse it back when costs are really, really high. And costs can go high to really high, and a really high cost might be, you're at a peak in New England, so the day before they might say, okay, we're gonna use 23,000 megawatts in this area, and they'll start turning the generators on and stacking them. But then if all of a sudden a couple of the nuclear plants shut down, like Millstone and Seabrook, now your market price is going to go through the roof. So you wanna have things in place that are gonna prevent those spike shocks from happening. So these microgrid systems work to help mitigate that from happening. So you have regular fluctuations in volatility in the summertime, and it can get really expensive, and then you have critical that can be really outrageous, and these types of things help both. We also have programs with our large customers where we share with them the benefit of reducing. So when we send them a shred the peak alert, and they may, cut a bank down in their commercial industry, and they'll cut power, whatever money that they've saved by reducing that peak, we have a share program with them. We also have about 800 or 1,000 residential customers that are part of our Shred the Peak program. So it's quite a big program between the microgrids that we've built, the residential customers and the commercial customers that are in those programs, constantly trying to save money for all of our customers.
Mr. Reed?
Yeah, to dovetail on Mr. Kyra's point on Wildwood Station. It's a surging station that you're planning on?
Switching
station.
It's just a couple of big switches, like I think, picture a train station just switching tracks.
Okay.
As opposed to a substation, which, the best way to explain a substation is when power comes off of a transmission, voltage is pressure. So when you have to slow the pressure down and then redistribute the pressure at a level that you can feed neighborhoods. And then when it comes to your house, it goes to another transformer that reduces the pressure down at that transformer even more. So a substation is controlling the pressure, looking at the current. It has a lot of relays, circuit breakers. None of that's gonna be there. It's just gonna be a couple of switches in order to redirect the train tracks for contingency feeding.
Is there any particular reason why that could not be on the plot that you have identified on 125?
Because this has switching capability in it. What you're trying to do is switch it on the tracks miles away.
Okay.
Where it's another intersection of other feeders because that substation at Wildwood already has all the feeders coming into the substation.
Yep.
So you still want to be able to switch between them, but you're not using it as a substation to produce capacity or change voltage or any of that complicated equipment. They're just switches.
Okay, so there would be, the substation on Wildwood would turn into a switching station.
Correct.
And this plot would be both a substation and a switching station?
Well, a substation inherently has switching capabilities in
Okay, all
it.
right. I ask you to just bear with me because
no.
this is
No, I'm-
not my field of expertise.
Sure.
Is there any reason why you would not be interested in a long-term lease of this property as opposed to a sale? I understand that certainly if the price that we agree to is exorbitantly high, that gets passed along to all of us because we're the consumers as well. So I just wanted to see if a long-term lease, if there was an appetite for that as well.
I think the RMLD is interested in any combination. I mean, we have, the price that we were working with National Grid, I'd have to say there's 3 or 4 professional appraisals done on all sides to come up with those prices of what it cost per acre. So, and essentially got, initial approval from the Board of Commissioners and the CAB members in order to proceed. So anything, I think, is from that level and in that level, including leasing, I'm sure is something that Mead and I can work with technically, and the Board and Commissioners could work with monetarily.
Okay. I know you've alluded to it, that there's been a lot of development in North Wilmington. That's where you see a lot of the growth, both in recent decades and also projecting into the future as well. At some point, if this substation and switching station, or substation, that includes a switching station, comes to fruition, at some point it's going to get to the same point that the Wildwood is now. And I think it might be wise of us to at least keep the option open when this hypothetical substation is taken off service decades from now, that the town might have a use for it at that point, and RMLD might not need to continue to use the land. As of right now, the Wildwood station is on land that's owned by RMLD, correct? Right. So I think it would at least leave our options open in the future for, should the town have a need well after in a columbarium in Wildwood, I guess, but.
One second. Hamid is saying that it's optimal to have the switching station at Wildwood, but I guess if it came down to having to replicate the land, if this wasn't considered, if you guys considered it and then the state considered it as a public hardship, maybe the land could be used to replicate and just wouldn't have a switching station. It would be optimal to have it, but.
I wasn't suggesting that something happened with Wildwood, other than what you've outlined as your intent. I was more suggesting that for the plot on 125, right now, the town owns it, thanks in part to your due diligence. And we know that now. And I think it's certainly wise to work with RMLD so that a substation is built there, because of the concerns and the hardship that you've outlined, and also because RMLD provides electricity to Wilmington residents at a rate that is better than some of the larger competitors. But decades from now, the substation that you anticipate building, at some point, will be in the same condition that Wildwood is right now. And I'm saying, if it's 80 years from now, the town may want to have the option to discuss with RMLD what to do with its land, if it's to continue to use it as a substation or not. Right now, Wildwood is owned by you guys. So I'm not saying I don't want to work with you. I think you guys, certainly, there's a mutual interest in making sure that our power grid stays online and efficient and effective, or I guess at a good price point for the residents in town. What I'm saying is we might be able to structure this transaction in a way that you guys get what you want and the town leaves its options open in the very long term.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm done.
Well, I didn't want to jump in. Building off of what Mr. Eaton said, I had written, I think he might have been looking at my notes, but I'll give him credit for the thought himself.
No cheating on me.
I was going to say, my writing is awful, so I don't think he actually could read it. My question is, and this might be more of a Mr. Hull question, would a land lease still have us having to follow Article 97?
Yes.
Okay, so that doesn't get us out of that requirement at all. Because I agree, as you were talking, in my mind, I'm thinking this makes more sense to the town if we're doing something that's revenue generating over a period of time. But I have a lot of other questions. So this was what was given to us with kind of, this is the one I'm referencing. Are you saying that this whole parcel is 8 acres? Because yours looks like it ends kind of here.
I'm not sure.
Are we saying that this is all 8 acres, or is it here?
No, the entire parcel is 19 and change, if I recall, 19,
19
6.
acres,
Right, so it runs from 125 down to Ainsworth Road. That entire parcel
this whole thing?
is 19 and change.
Okay, and it looks like there's some wet areas. Do we know how much of this parcel is buildable?
I mean, I would defer to Paul, perhaps. I know Paul and Valerie have walked the site.
Yeah, I think the area that Ms. O'Brien referenced in the front seems upland area, buildable land, with the exception of
That'd be up here.
it being Article 97.
So what about the stuff down by Ainsworth?
Down by Ainsworth also there is, got that number here. Say it was close to 10 acres.
So in reality, it's a 19-acre lot,
9 acres down by Ainsworth.
and then about 8 up here.
Yeah, the topography is challenging. There's 30 to 40 foot grade differentials from one side to the other, kind of moving
Would it
across
be,
the property.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, would
Sure.
it be fair to say by accessing up here, we're actually accessing this entire area, we have the potential to access the entire area?
From 125, you would, it's certainly the more logical access point. The lot does have wetland area as kind of at its pinch point, at its neck in the middle.
Right.
That kind of comes together there. I'd
Is-
say the wetland boundaries shown on the GIS map looked fairly accurate to me.
Okay, and would there be the potential to have at least a roadway in that area, or is it too narrow for a roadway?
Potentially. There is, like I said, some grade changes that you'd have to overcome that kind of go east to west there.
Okay, so my next question is kind of with the curb cut to 125. How many vehicles would be going to your substation? Is it something where you have staff there, or is it something that
No.
it just gets serviced?
Just serviced.
Okay, so would you, because when I'm looking at it, and I remember when we were talking about the safety building substation discussion, one of the things that was raised was putting a kind of curb cut into 125 is gonna be problematic because of the flow of traffic. And obviously having emergency vehicles exiting at a rapid rate of speed would probably require some type of safety lighting. And my concern in looking at this, and I'm not really good at reading maps, it looks like it's kind of right in between the Ballardvale intersection and the Andover Street intersection, maybe closer to Andover Street.
Yes.
So there'd be a curb cut in between those two intersections, but there wouldn't be a need for any type of signaling to have traffic stop unless we were considering the front 2 acres for the safety building substation. You wouldn't require any type of traffic. Okay. So now we know we have about 17 acres. We know that there's gonna be a curb cut, but that if we wanted to utilize this for the safety building substation, we'd have to look at the traffic pattern of it, I'm assuming. How much land do you have on Wildwood, and where is that located? Do you know how much land is
Yeah,
on
it's-
substation 5?
It's very small. I
Less
don't know
than an acre.
exactly, much less than.
Much
Okay,
less than
so it would just be able to be converted to a stitching station and nothing else?
Just enough for what we got there, just
Okay.
enough.
You can't build anything.
can't
and
build
The first thing we looked at was trying to build something in parallel, like a bypass surgery. But the wetlands have encroached and there's just physically not enough room to be able to do it.
Okay. Because I definitely am intrigued by the amount of land that's available. I think we should be exploring how we can access it and what it could possibly, I mean, you said that this is a hardship because substation 5 is at the end of its useful life, and unfortunately Wilmington has a lot of buildings that I think people would deem at the end of their useful life. So we'd want to make sure that this is thoughtfully planned to help tip the domino, to help create the domino effect of improving the other needs of the town. I don't want to diminish the need for power, obviously. I don't want to, I think the fact that we found this land, I mean, it's kind of like when you find a 20 in your winter coat, right? But I want to make sure we're utilizing it appropriately, and I think that warrants further discussion. I would really be interested to discuss and to know more about kind of what a land lease would look like, how we can configure this, so that we could utilize the land for other needs of the town. I don't know if it makes sense for it to be the safety building substation, given the location, but the location looks great, but given that it's right off of 125. But I do have some concerns. You know, I'm curious what the price per acre of the assessments, of the appraisals were, because there's a farm not too far from there that has been discussed at kind of a premium cost with the price per acre, and this is, you know, literally across the street, 19 acres of it, that the town could be utilizing. So I'm really interested to know the benefits to the town in this asset that we've discovered. But I don't want to minimize your need. I think we need to have more of a discussion on how we can make this a win-win for everybody.
I would caution the idea of looking at the entire parcel as a candidate for full build-out, so to speak. I mean, I think the original intent of this property that was purchased back in 1938 was protection of the Browns Crossing well fields. You know, I think there is a prospect or a possibility of looking at the upper edge along 125, potentially for a substation, as well as perhaps a substation that is a electrical substation as well as a fire substation. But I'm cautious about the idea of using that and thinking that we have full access to that entire piece of property. And first of all, just in terms of having to replicate that somewhere, we would then have to come up with 19 acres of property somewhere else, which I think would be challenging. But, you know, to the extent that that is being used as a, or has been used as a buffer to the well fields, I think is an important consideration.
Okay. I'm all set.
Okay. Well, as you can see, obviously, this is a very important discussion that we're having. We appreciate you bringing it back to us. You can see what I'm hearing tonight is that there's obviously not so much hesitation as to the need of a new power substation, as much as there's a little bit of pause from the committee members, as there should be, about how we want to best utilize this property that we've come upon. So we certainly have some work to do, I think, internally on what we think might be best for us. We've had a great partnership with you folks for a long time. We hope that will continue. And I know that the manager will be in touch with you in the near future, as long as we can have some time to examine the entire property, what fits best, what works best, what will protect what we have there best, and what will best fit the needs of our future of this community. So,
Mr. Chair, if I could just make a request.
Sure.
As part of that analysis, if there's a way that we could have some type of comparison of purchase versus lease, kind of what the purchase price, a general idea what the purchase price might look like, what the taxes would be that generates from that, versus what a lease would look like for revenue generating purposes, I think it would help.
absolutely. Mr.
So
McCoy?
just real quick, I know it's going late. I know the manager said that's what Article 97 land. So there's several hurdles that you have to go over in order to accomplish your goal. But you said earlier, public hardship. Would that take away those hurdles if it was, let's say you were able to, you need it. Everyone's talking about how North Wilmington has potential to build out. We're talking about a fire substation somewhere in North Wilmington. If you go into public hardship, can you eliminate Article 97 land if it's public hardship?
I'm not in a position to answer that right now, but I am looking into it because I was hoping to have gotten an answer tonight, to be able to tell you. But the research I'm getting at so far, and I've reached out to all the other 41 municipals in the state. I have a lot of questions out there and getting some of the answers back, but there has been things in the past done. You know, electrical supply is considered, you know, critical.
Right.
And so it is oftentimes treated differently than what might be considered as important. You know, I'm not trying to judge what's important or not. It really is based on the people who are, you know, tasked with lifting the restriction and what qualifications that you need in order to do that. You know, right at the end of the day, it's still your land. And I was trying to provide Jeff with as much information. Like I said, when I left his office the other day, I was quite sure if we had that curb cut all said and done with National Grid, but as it turns out, we did with Mass DOT. So just trying to provide as much information that I could as far as that. And that's why I'm showing this option one. We're kind of just tucked up underneath the substation transmission lines. Not a lot of people want to live there or put anything there. And we certainly can live without the microgrid, which would, you know, we're down to a little bit more than an acre. We could probably build it and get away with it and make it happen. I think at this point, we're just more concerned about the critical nature of the existing station and what, you know, those consequences that could happen if it weren't to stay functioning properly.
It would be nice to know if we could get an answer, public hardship, would that eliminate Article 97 land? If that's the case, then obviously you could do something a lot quicker, and maybe the town, because of public safety, we're talking about that. To me, that's a public hardship as well.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, may I add one?
Please.
Okay, I just wanted to bring it to your attention then. Even if we decide today that this is definitely a plan to go, you're talking about 3 years for the substation to go online. So timing-wise, the clock is ticking. So we were hoping that, you know, with National Grid, if this was a property with National Grid, with purchasing the land, and I would be breaking the ground now. So to have the substation online by 2021. Now, probably with the plan, we're gonna have to, if we purchase the land in 2020, you're talking about 2022 to go online, if at the best case scenario. So I don't know what time span you're talking about, you know, and I do respect, you know, you have to go back and definitely see what is the best for the town, the best interest of the town. But I just wanted to add that, you know, it's not like, you know, we got, as soon as the decision is made, the substation is gonna go right away. It takes 3 years. The equipment, if we order today, it's gonna take anytime between a year to 18 months just to build it for us. And we're gonna have to go through the bidding process and everything. We're talking about 2 years at its best, trying to, you know, if you order, going through the bidding process, order and getting the equipment.
I think what, can I just add something, Chair?
Please.
I think what Hamid's trying to say is, if it's not something that you think you can understand that this has to be done sooner than later, we would just as soon just start looking for another piece of land. We know that there's not many that meet this criteria in that area near the 115 transmission lines, but we would much rather just go 100 miles an hour in a different direction if you don't think that it's something that you know, that you think will work for the town. Because as the time is of essence, and it isn't to try to put pressure on anybody. You have to understand that this has already been going on for years, and we just thought we were so close, and we just want to make sure that everybody stays in power. That's all.
Mr. Chair, just a quick question. Don't want to prolong it. But the microgrid, you talked about 1.5 acres that you needed. Does that include the microgrid? I just need that clarified. It's either,
It
you're
would
talking
be
about under an
it would-
acre, now you're talking,
No,
Please.
what I was saying was no less than 1.5 acres just to build a substation, and up to 3 acres to have a microgrid.
oh,
So the original
And-
property,
and- So the 3 acres would be for the substation and microgrid, 1.5 just the substation.
right. The land that we were buying from National Grid was 3 acres. That was gonna be a substation and 2 batteries, 2 future batteries.
okay. just
So
wanted to
if we
clarify
got
that,
rid of the
'cause you-
microgrid, we just really wanna tuck ourselves right up into
No.
the transmission, it'd be 1.5 acres to just build a substation.
No, I think we understand the urgency of it, no doubt about it, but, and I don't know, a substation that we're talking of, a fire substation, is around 3 acres or so, I think was discussed. So you're talking about a total of 6 acres out of the 19 acres. As long as the well station, the well fields are protected, I think we should look at this seriously.
And that we will, no question about it. And to answer your question, to your point, obviously, we're just representatives of the community, and any type of transaction like this would have to be approved at town meeting in the spring and voted on by the residents. So I find this to be very informative, what you brought to us tonight, but it sounds like both parties need to do a little more homework to figure out what would be the best deal for both of us. I don't think any of us are experts in Article 97. We certainly need to do a little more work there, and we look forward to continuing this conversation with you.
We're grateful for your time.
Thank you so much. Appreciate
Thank
it
you.
for the time.
Okay. Okay, we'll move right along to communications. Mr. Hull.
Yes, so the first communication involves a memo from me to the board regarding a matter that the town clerk has brought to my attention with regard to the training that is required in compliance with the conflict of interest law. There are certain individuals, certain positions within the town that do not, can be deemed exempt from the conflict of interest requirements, and they're namely positions like the lifeguards, recreation, playground staff. These are typically seasonal employees that are part-time, and there's a provision within the law that allows me to designate an individual to essentially assess these various positions and determine whether or not they can be deemed exempt. So I'm just noting that the town clerk, I've designated her as the person to fulfill that role.
Okay, thank you.
Next is a memo to the board with regard to the fire and police substation. There was a request a few meetings ago to prepare a document about the prospect of a fire and police substation. There's been a fair amount of discussion that I've had with the police chief and the deputy fire chief about this. We've taken a look at a neighboring community's recent substation. Based upon what we've seen and some information I've gathered from other sources, I would estimate that the cost for a fire police substation is about $8 million. And of that, there's various elements. First, we would need to hire an owner's project manager. Under the procurement law, any kind of public construction that exceeds $1.5 million in cost, you need to have an owner's project manager, which is essentially a representative that deals with the contractor and the architect. We'd also need to have an architect and engineering firm to design the facility. Those two costs are estimated to be about $1 million, and then the actual construction cost is roughly $7 million. I would just note that these numbers are very preliminary, and obviously, given the economy that we're in right now, if this happens perhaps in a year or two or more, those numbers could go up. Before we can even get to that point, though, we first have to identify a location for a substation, and there's been a number of sites that have been discussed. In fact, one of the sites that we've looked at internally is this site off of 125. The estimate that we have is that a substation would require about 2 acres of property to accommodate it. And so we've, one of the values of this particular site on 125 is that certainly the proximity to North Wilmington is good. There's access to water and the utilities. Some of the other sites you'll recall is a site further on, down on 125, on the I guess it would be the easterly side of Andover Street and Route 125, that the water department owns. That property, one of the challenges there is that it doesn't have access to utilities, so all of the water and all the other utilities would have to be brought to that site, so it's less advantageous. That property also is Article 97 property. So there's other sites that we've looked at, but ultimately, until we can get to a site, none of the other work can happen. In terms of the steps, once we identify a site, if it's town-owned property, then depending upon if it's Article 97, then there's a process that was earlier described we would have to go through. If we can't identify town property, then we would have to look at purchasing property, which certainly will add to the cost of a substation. But once we get over the hurdle of identifying the piece of property, then the next step would really be to seek funds for the OPM, owner's project manager, and the architect. My recommendation would be for that $1 million or thereabouts, to take that from either available funds, free cash, or the town's capital stabilization account. Once that is done, we would have to go out for procurement for both the OPM and the architect. The architect would take approximately 10 months to go through the design process and come up with bid documents. At that point, we would be in a position to go out for bid for a contractor. That cost, assuming it's somewhere in the neighborhood of $7 million, it would be my recommendation that we go through a borrowing on that, just because of the size of the price tag for that. And once that takes place, then we're talking another year to year and a half for that work to be completed. So it's a lengthy process, and unfortunately, until we have a site, it's rather difficult to project the numbers.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman.
Sure.
Could I make a comment? I mean, I've been on the board a long time, and for years and years, we talked about a substation, fire substation in North Wilmington. And I have to be honest, the last time the chief and the fire chief were here, they talked about fire station / police station. I said, yeah, sure, why not? I looked at it and made, whatever. But then some public had some concerns. Yeah, I thought we were talking fire substation, not a police, and I'm all for law enforcement. But I asked the chief, I go, what exactly are you talking about for a substation for the police department? And the chief here can speak for himself, and I think I talked to you at one time, Jeff, that as you walk into the public safety building, to the right-hand side, there's a meeting room. Is that, from what I understand, the extent of what you're gonna be doing relative to the, if the new building does go in that area? Is it just basically gonna be a conference room where for police officers in North Wilmington, instead of him going to the, just say the central station, he'd be going in that area? I mean, I just think folks really need to know out there, what are we gonna really do?
Sure, when the fire chief had approached me about it, the opportunities we were talking about were for a sally port, a place to park a cruiser, place to go in, do a report, have an office area, and some additional storage, which we're always looking for, from the main station. So that it was that plus the additional training room that we could use. Our range is in North Wilmington. If we could do the classroom portion of the range, a training facility closer to the range. Right now we just have a trailer there. We can only fit about 6 or 7 guys in there. That would be a benefit. So those are just some of the things that were offered when the deputy approached me about the project.
I'm just speaking as a selectman. I had no issue with that, but I think the conception out there, some folks are looking, is it gonna be 50% police, 50% fire? We folks really don't know out there, but I think that's the message that we need to send out, that we're basically looking for a couple of rooms at the substation for the use of the police department, and the majority of it's gonna be for a fire substation. That's
clearly the intent, that the predominant use would be fire, with the opportunities that potentially, that the chief talked about.
And I'm in agreement. I'll just say this, not to beat the drum on it, but I know we're gonna take 1.5 million out of free cash to really get this thing going. I would hope to think, and I understand the manager, I respect the manager, his opinion. I'd really love for CS to take the 6.5 million out of free cash and not even raise the tax dollar. Just pay the whole thing right out. That's me, but I just bring that up now. I know we're gonna be talking about it down the road, so.
So
Thank you.
just to be clear, in terms of, the borrowing piece, one of the things that we have talked about internally is, how to do the borrowing in a way that isn't going to break the bank. So, for example, right now, we are retiring debt on an annual basis. Predominant debt is the high school. If we were to do no further borrowing, all of our debt would be retired in 2037. But, clearly there's an expectation and a need to build some of these projects, pursue some of these projects, and there will likely be debt going forward. So, depending upon the cost of this substation, if we assume $7 million, in today's situation, if we were to borrow, borrow for 20 years, we would essentially be offsetting for at least a period of time the diminishing debt that we're already seeing. So there would be kind of a quid pro quo of sorts. So when you mention the concern about raising taxes, I understand that, and that's one of the reasons why it's important to try to work this borrowing in such a way that we're offsetting debt that's diminishing. That's not to say that going forward, we may have to, and probably likely will have to, increase our borrowing so that it outpaces the reduction in debt. And given the types of projects that have been talked about, whether it's the fire substation, a town hall, school admin building, a senior center, the schools, the Wildwood School that's been talked about, all these projects, are kind of coming to a head right now. Clearly, one of the challenges is how those get prioritized and how they get scheduled out so that we're not shocking the system all in the course of, 3 to 5 years.
Yeah, and again, this is a preliminary 30,000-foot look here. There are obviously no details, as you mentioned. It's really going to be difficult to hammer down even a design until we have a location that we all feel is a good fit. But I think it's important that you did this work. I appreciate you looking into this to the best of your ability. Again, this information is not in the facilities master plan, unlike some of the other projects that we're looking at this time. So that's important that we have this at our disposal as we meet this crossroads of deciding where we're going to go forward. One thing, Chief, if I may, is just to follow up. When you were here with us 2 months ago in August, I think you talked about, again, the point of a substation is to increase response times for residents. And you talked about that if an officer had an incident in the northern part of Wilmington, instead of going back to the central station, if you will, to write the report, and then again taking him out of that sector, if you will, again, he or she would be in North Wilmington and able to respond to a call, say, someone was having a medical issue or whatever, and the response time would be increased. Is that correct?
Right, and certainly the goal is to have them, when they're out, roll call would be at the main station, because that's where all the equipment would be. We're not talking about moving any, serious equipment up to the substation, wherever it is. But then at that point, certainly, when they leave, for the day, that would be the area they would come back to do the reports. And the hope is, because they're up in that area, response time will improve.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I think that's the goal, and I really appreciate both of you, gentlemen, who've spent a lot of time working with the manager, just giving us a good ballpark figures, what we can kind of expect if we wanted to pursue a project like this. And again, I think it's so important that we take a look at these response times. I know that the fire administration did a great job looking at a lot of the details when you drill down. The large majority of the calls are to our senior citizens, and we want to make sure that we're there for them when they need us. So that's or anybody for that matter. And we don't want them getting stuck behind a train or, in the wrong part of town. We want to make sure we can be there for a resident when they're in need. So again, I thank three of you and your staff for giving us a better picture of what a substation may look like.
Next is memo to the board with regard to the public schools enrollment. There was a document that was presented at a recent school committee meeting that was as I understand it, in talking to the Director of Administration and Finance, a very preliminary document that talked about the enrollment, and it was really intended, as I understand it, to be presented to the school committee to identify any potential imbalances with regard to the number of students in various classrooms, because there are certain requirements that the schools have to adhere to in terms of the student-teacher ratio. But all that being said, the document referenced an enrollment, and again, this is very preliminary. It hasn't been vetted by the school department or the DESE, which is the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. They're the ones that ultimately have final say in that Chapter 70 student aid, financial aid is based upon that number. They were looking at 3,220 as the enrollment, which is down 35 from the prior year. And that's really consistent with what we have seen over the last number of years. And I just wanted to note, in particular, a quote from the facilities plan. This was based upon research that had been done at that time. It said from 2005 to 2006, or from the 2005-2006 through 2015-2016, the pre-K enrollment has slowly been steadily declining by 269 students, or about 14.2%. And as I mentioned in a prior memo, the expectation is that the enrollment will continue to decline, at least over the foreseeable future.
Thank you. And again, this is in an effort to, you can see a theme here, as we're preparing to make important decisions about the future of our buildings. This was discussed at a recent school committee meeting. I thought it was important that we be able to paint this picture of what our student populations are. We know that our senior population is growing dramatically. We can see here that our student enrollment is declining. So we can build a better picture here of what we want to do going forward. So thank you for that.
Mr. Chairman,
Sure.
can I make a quick comment? I just want to touch upon what the manager said. It's basically a memo that he gave. It's in our packet from September 27, 2019, and it says, while I was unclear with the 96-seat reference based upon consultation, it was basically, and it says right here that it was brought up at a selectmen's meeting. When we had the gentleman here talking about maybe building 120, say, units down in North Wilmington, I brought it up and said, well, I know we built the high school, we're 960 seats, but we'll, within 5 years, we're like at 96 seats away from full capacity. Well, I've been saying it for about a year and a half, and just to let you know, is we had that memo, and then what I did is I contacted the school department on October 2nd, and I know the manager has a memo here that he's referring, October 11th. So I said, simple terms, can you just tell me what was the seating capacity of the new high school? I knew it was 960, and can you just tell me each fiscal year, what was the student population? So I'm going back to fiscal year 18, which is realistically 2017, and the number of students for the school is 960, but at the time, there was 862 students in FY18. So I did the quick math. I mean, it's, 960 minus 862 is 98 seats. I was saying 96 seats, so, I mean, the number is realistic, but I can be honest, FY19, it goes down to 630. So now at that year, so we're gonna have 130 seats available, and it says projected in FY20 would be 820 seats. So there will be like 140 seats away. No, I get it, I'm saying, but the numbers I mentioned were accurate, was back then. I know I said 5 years, but I've been talking about it since 2017. And, no, I just bring that up, and I just wanted to mention that, that's all. Thank you. And I think I did say, if you have a couple of developments like that, then we're gonna be facing an issue down the road, but that's when I brought that up at that time, Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Okay, next is, under correspondence, a memo from me to the Board of Selectmen, just announcing the appointment of the next fire chief. As you know, Joe McMahon, who is the current fire chief, is slated to retire in February. And so it's, I'm pleased to announce that effective upon his retirement, the new chief will be Bill Kavanaugh. Bill has been with the department since 2007. Prior to that, he was in the Navy, honorably discharged, has really kind of climbed the ladder, so to speak, pretty quickly, became a lieutenant, and then in April of 2018, I appointed him as the deputy. Some of the things that have struck me about Mr. Kavanaugh is his real passion for the fire and EMS service. I think it's literally in his blood. But he's also interested in picking up on different skills, looking to continue to develop his own professional skills. And clearly, one of the things that is notable of late here is the work that he did on the assuring that we get the grant for $1.5 million for Safer Grant, right? And so I'm just pleased to announce that he will be the new chief effective in February.
And the chief in waiting is here tonight. We want to congratulate you, Bill, and wish you well. Thank you for your service to our country and to our community, and it's nice to see yet another homegrown resident ascend to such a high position in the community. So we wish you well and we congratulate you.
Thank you.
Next in the correspondence is a memo from the town clerk, and I'll just at least cover some of this. She writes that as the 2020 election cycle approaches, the Office of the Town Clerk seeks people interested in working at the upcoming elections, early voting sessions, and town meeting. The pertinent dates are as follows: presidential primary Tuesday, March 3, 2020. Annual town elections, Saturday, April 25th, 2020. Annual town meeting, Saturday, May 2nd, 2020. State primary, Tuesday, September 15, 2020. Early voting, Monday to Friday, October 19th to the 23rd, 2020. Saturday, October 24th, 2020. Monday through Friday, October 26th to the 30th, 2020. And then the state election, Tuesday, November 3rd, 2020.
Mr. Chair, I have a question to the manager. I had a former Wilmington resident ask me if he could apply for one of these positions as an election worker. And do you just want Wilmington residents for election workers, or can outside?
I don't think it necessarily has to be restricted to Wilmington alone, no.
Okay.
Nope.
Thank you.
Your preference to Wilmington residents?
Sure, oh, yeah.
Just, real quick, Jeff, I noticed here you're gonna pay $12 an hour plus lunch. Come next year, isn't minimum wage gonna be $13 an hour? Did you take a look at that? I mean, I think.
Yeah, well, it is,
Yeah.
these part-time positions are not, we're not
Required to do minimum
required to pay the minimum wage, but we certainly try to
All right, I didn't
make
want,
it.
I'm not trying to shed any light here, but I just want to make sure we didn't get
Right,
tabbed
no,
with
no,
with a fine from the state. All right,
no, we're
great.
good. Next is notice from the health director about the upcoming flu clinic, ages 5 and up, Saturday, October 19th, 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. Wilmington Town Hall, injectable and flu mist will be available. High dose will not be available. So if there's any questions on that, you can talk to the health director, Shelley Newhouse. Next is correspondence with regard to Xfinity, basically talking about some changes in channel lineup effective October 29th. One of the channels will be, there'll be an additional channel added, and then as of December 4th, 2019, a channel will be dropped. All this information is sent out to cable customers. Next is information that was provided by the chair of the Economic Development Committee, Mike Shampoo. I won't read the entire piece, but I think it is noteworthy. It's intended to provide the Board of Selectmen with a status of the committee, and in particular describes their role as they've discussed it, which is as follows. The Wilmington Economic Development Committee committee's purpose is to be a proactive arm on behalf of the town of Wilmington to promote healthy, balanced, sustainable economic development. The Wilmington Economic Development Committee's tasks may include, 1, identify, develop, and present recommendations to the Board of Selectmen related to economic development. 2, identify strengths and weaknesses of Wilmington as a host community for existing and potential new commercial enterprise. 3, work cooperatively with the town, with other town committees in order to accomplish common goals. 4, work cooperatively with the Chamber of Commerce and community members to enhance communications on matters of economic development, policy, and programs. 5, work with the federal and state legislative delegations and agencies to avail the town of available technical, informational, and financial resources related to economic development. And 6, consider and review documents, studies, and plans as they pertain to economic development. 7, update and advise the Board of Selectmen as requested or warranted.
And Jeff, if I could just add that there is more information on the town's website. The Economic Development Committee has their own page on the site. If you'd like to find out more, when the meetings are, or if you'd like to give input, there's a place to send an email as well.
And then finally, under correspondence is a letter from the Director of Veteran Services, Louis Smaglia. I'll just read this into the record. The Wilmington Department of Veteran Services invites you to participate in remembering and honoring our past and present veterans on Monday, November 11, 2019. We will assemble at the 4th of July parking lot at 10:45 a.m. and proceed to the town common for this year's Veterans Day ceremonies to start at 11 a.m. I'd like to personally invite you to say a few words on behalf of the veterans.
Okay, we'll move into board to consider items.
This next one is board to consider request of Susan Connors, We're One Wilmington, to change the date of their event. This was their annual road race, looking to change it from May 3rd, 2020 to Sunday, April 26th, 2020.
Okay, is there a motion? Thank you. Motion's made. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second, and any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
I'm going to be abstaining since I'm the president of We're One Wilmington.
That seems appropriate, thank you.
Thank you.
So we have 4 in favor, none against it, and 1 abstaining.
All right, next is board to consider a request, and I'm going to attempt this last name, but Julie Sabracha Manos, I believe it is.
That's it.
Okay.
You got it.
And she is a representative of the Sons of Italy, seeking to use the town common municipal parking lot on Saturday, December 28th, 2019, 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. for the purpose of a blood drive.
Okay, is there a motion?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Motion's made and second. Is there any discussion?
This is for Children's Hospital, by the way, just so you know.
Thank you. So the motion's been made and seconded. All in favor? It's unanimous.
Next is a board to consider a request from Tara DiFilippo to install a stop sign on Herndon Ave and Jakewith Road.
Recommendations?
There's a recommendation here from the police chief. Request was made for the stop sign at the intersection of Jakewith Road and Herndon Street, dated September 6, 2019, submitted by resident Tara DiFilippo, which has also been reviewed with the safety officer, Brian Moon, of the Wilmington Police Department. Upon review, it is noted that the intersection does not meet all of the Manual of Traffic Control Devices criteria concerning stop signs. However, given the increase in the volume of traffic related to these streets being used as cut-throughs to get to Shawshene Ave, Route 129, and recent accident data that showed 2 accidents at that intersection in the last 2 years, I am recommending a stop sign be placed at this intersection. So the recommendation is install 2 stop signs, 1 placed at the corner of Herndon at Jakewith in both directions.
Okay, is there a motion?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Motion's been made
Second.
and seconded. Is there any discussion?
You just have a point of clarification, so it says, placed at the corner of Harndon and Jaquith, that is the intersection facing both directions. There's 4 directions in an intersection. So is this on Jaquith or is this on Harndon?
It would be on Jaquith, I believe, right?
I'm ready to have it.
Yeah, on Jaquith.
Okay.
Okay, any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? It's unanimous.
Next, as had been the practice here in the recent years, is a request to consider various community groups who are seeking to conduct events that will require road closures. And there are several organizations. Mr. Chair, would you like me to go through all of them for one single vote? They're all basically recommended for approval.
Well, if there aren't any objections, we'll take them all up at once. Seeing none?
So the first is Wilmington's 16th Annual Half Marathon 5K Run Walk, which is put on by the Wilmington Tewksbury Chamber of Commerce. And the date is September 27th. Then next we have the Soul Sisters Running Club 3rd Annual Winter Solstice 5K Road Race. This is slated to take place on December 12th of 2020. Then we have the Pan Mass Challenge Wilmington Kids Bike Ride, the 15th annual. And this is, as you know, over at Carter Lane in Butler School, slated to take place on Sunday, May 23rd, 2021. We have the Fun on the 4th celebration, their race walk, which is slated to take place, actually the date of the race, I think, is the
It's during that
5th.
week.
Yeah, it's
right?
during that week. Certainly, their event runs from July 1 to the 5th.
That would be a really long race, 4 days.
Yes.
I wouldn't do well.
We also have Wilmington Little League Opening Day Parade scheduled for Saturday, April 17th, 2021. And there's actually a few groups that are coming off the list. We received notice from the folks that have worked on the Tony A. 5K that this past year was their last year. The Brady Foundation and We're One Wilmington 5K have all advised us that they will not be conducting their events in the fiscal 2021 period, so July 1, 2020 to June 30, 2021.
Okay. Would anybody like to make a motion to accept the proposed races, dates, and times and location?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Eaton. Motion's been made. Is there a second?
A second.
Motion's made and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? It's unanimous to those races. And our thanks to those groups.
Next is a board to consider the sale of town vehicles and equipment. This is something that happens typically on an annual basis. Every year, the Public Works Department, the Mechanics Division takes a look at the various vehicles and other equipment that we have that has served its useful life. And so in order for us to go through the disposition process, which requires posting and advertising and so on, I would need a vote of the Board of Selectmen that would authorize this disposition to take place.
Would anyone like to offer a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Kyra. Any second?
Second.
Motion's made and second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? It's unanimous.
So just as an FYI, this will be posted on the town's website. It'll be in the town crier and in the state combis listing. So anyone who's interested in a vehicle that is perhaps on the downside of life, but still seaworthy, that's where you would go. The next item is the board to consider discussion with regard to Princeton Properties proposal. So you recall, we had a presentation from the representative from Princeton Properties about the prospect of affordable housing development at Jefferson Road, and this would be an opportunity for the board to have a conversation about that, whether there is interest in the town pursuing further discussions with the developer, or whether it's not something we ought to put time and effort into.
And just to be clear, we added this to the agenda. We thought that it was obviously worthwhile continuing the conversation based on what we saw. But just to be clear, anybody who wanted to propose any projects would have to go through the regulatory process. This board can't give the blessing to any project. But we wanted to have an opportunity for the board to have discussion after they heard from residents since the last time we met. Mr. McCoy.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, it's your call. I don't know if it was really open to the residents that night. I can't recall. The gentleman was just here, maybe the last meeting and the meeting before. I mean,
Well,
why?
just to be clear, I don't want to interrupt you, all the meetings are open to the public, right?
No, they're all open to the public, but I know some residents were, I don't know if the residents were in the audience specifically to talk about what the gentleman was talking about. I mean, you're the chair, wouldn't you think maybe, I don't think it's a huge rush, maybe we have an agenda item to have a public hearing to tell folks what is being proposed in that area and maybe get a little input because, you know, I mean, you're the chairman, so that'd be my recommendation. We keep on talking about it. How about we just have one meeting, public hearing, maybe have it in the auditorium and let folks weigh in it a little bit, just, you know, because it's gonna be in that area. And, but I'll leave that to you and the board, whatever you wanna do.
Certainly take it under advisement. That's why we're having a discussion here.
That's right, yeah.
Anybody else? Mr. Eden?
Yeah, so just to recap a little bit, so I think, I think the reality of the situation is we're projected to fall below the 10% affordable housing threshold after the 2020 census, which would mean that the town would be susceptible to a 40B development or 40B developments coming to town, which are can be large and can certainly strain resources to the existing infrastructure, schools, DPW, things like that. And I think if this proposed project, and it's not even really proposed at this point, because I think the gentleman that was before us a few weeks ago was speaking more in the abstract. He hadn't yet been able to determine exactly how buildings would be constructed or exactly how many units. He had a target figure that he didn't want to go over, but it was very much in the abstract. But I think, to me at least, the biggest appeal of this project would be that it has the potential certainly to get us above that 10% affordable housing threshold. It feels like every single year when we go to annual town meeting, somebody stands up and says that property values are continuing to increase, and we have a need to create affordable housing options. And this is one type of option that folks could have. Mr. McCoy, you did bring up earlier that it could put a strain on schools. I did check my notes from that meeting on the 23rd. He did say that 50% of the units would be one bedroom, which certainly some of those units might be filled with parents with children. I don't imagine that the majority of them would, but that certainly would at least mitigate some of the potential to put too much of a strain on our school population and our schools. I don't think right now, because it's so abstract, because we don't really know how many buildings it's going to be, what businesses, if possible, because we did discuss the possibility of including some businesses in there, and he had his preferred position to not include that, but he said he was open to discussing it. I don't know if having a public meeting at the Board of Selectmen level, which again is not through the regulatory process that this would be through, would even be that productive. I think it would be very confusing to a lot of people, because if this gentleman was at the same spot that he was just 2 weeks ago, or 3 weeks ago, he would have to be answering a lot of questions with, I don't know yet. And I feel like that might not be the most productive way to conduct our meeting. It also sends the message that the Board of Selectmen is a regulatory authority over this, which it isn't. So I certainly want to be clear in what boards and committees are responsible for and what they are not responsible for, because I think when people start getting the idea that the Board of Selectmen has this plenary authority to do everything, I don't think that that's accurate. And I don't think at this point we're really at the point to ask some of the pointed questions that would need to be asked once we have a more concrete plan that's proposed. I certainly hear and sympathize and agree with a lot of the concerns of people with traffic, because that's certainly not gotten any better. And this would not make it all that much better, although I would imagine that many of the residents that would be here would either be commuting on the commuter rail at North Wilmington, which is right next door, or jumping on Route 93, which is just a short drive away. What I would like to do, and I hope at the end of tonight's discussion, we can, it's a board to consider item, so I'm assuming that there's going to be a vote, hopefully, for something, but my hope is that we can vote to instruct the town manager to continue discussions with Princeton Properties. I would like to see the town manager discuss with Princeton Properties the potential to include some sort of funding or subsidy, if you will, for a North Wilmington Fire Police combination substation as well. The town manager, and I imagine Mr. Perry was involved in the memo that was circulated in advance of tonight's meeting, that put a round figure of $8 million on a fire substation. I will applaud our Deputy Fire Chief and soon-to-be Fire Chief Kavanaugh for getting us that $1.5 million grant for the fire staffing, but certainly $8 million is a big number to chew on. And I think that some of the increase in workload that both the police and the fire department have seen as the population of town has grown will certainly increase by adding 120, 108. Those are the figures that were mentioned on the 23rd. Those figures aren't going to go down by putting in more units. So it's my hope that we can have we instruct the town manager to continue discussions with Princeton Properties and to include in part of those discussions what Princeton Properties might be willing to contribute towards a substation.
Thank you, and I really appreciate the points. I think it was one of the things that I took away from the presentation was I appreciated the gentleman's approach, how he was willing to come forth without having pulled any permits. And Valerie, I hate to put you on the spot, but I will. Do you know if the gentleman has pulled any permits to date?
No, so with a friendly 40B process, it's a little bit different. So before he pulled any permits, he would need to do a couple things. First thing he would apply for is to the state, to the Department of Housing and Community Development. But to apply to DHCD, he would actually need a sign-off by this board to do that. So the first thing is kind of getting the local support for the application. So this board would sign off on an application that would go into the state. They would review it, go through their process, make sure that it meets all their requirements, and then he would actually come back to the Board of Appeals for a comprehensive permit. So there's a little bit of an extra step with a friendly 40B up front to get local support.
Thank you. Yeah, I know he mentioned when he was here he hadn't pulled any permits, so can only take him at his word, so, but I think it's well said that we want to be clear that although I can appreciate the idea of having a public hearing, we need to be very clear to people at home, so we don't confuse them, that this board has no authority over, different projects that are proposed. We have committees in place, we have volunteers that work on them, and if a project is proposed, they would go through those channels. So we don't want to muddy the waters by confusing folks. So I think that's important, and I took that from your comments.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, just through you to Ms.
Sure.
Gingrich, just a point of clarification for my own edification. If the application that Princeton Properties may submit to us, would that have some of the detail, how detailed would that be, to your knowledge?
That would be a fully detailed plan.
Okay.
So he would have to know about his unit counts, he would have to have a design.
Yeah.
So a lot more information than he had at the last meeting.
Okay, so maybe to get to Mr. McCoy's point, maybe at that point, that would be the forum, once we have something we can point to and say, okay, it's gonna be this many units here, and it's gonna look like this, and this is if retail's gonna be involved, and people can come and ask questions and express their opinions. And I think we answer to them, so certainly I think I'd rather give folks a more concrete, I don't like, nobody likes answering questions in the abstract when it's just well, it might be this, it might be that, it's gonna be maybe these businesses are gonna stay, maybe some move out, maybe some are just demolished. My understanding is that the businesses that are there, it's his goal to keep them there. But I certainly think at that application process, if it gets to that point, once it gets to that point, would be the most efficient way for residents to ask questions and have their opinions expressed.
I agree with you, Mr. Eaton. I think it's be something more concrete before we make a decision. I'm glad we're having this discussion. I like the idea what Mr. Kyra said, maybe 108 units. But to go back to what you were saying, he was talking about 120 units, and we said it would be nice just to do that. But if you remember what he said, well, I need to really go back to the landowner, Eli's, because believe me, there's gonna be a commercial component there. It's going to be, unless they negotiate a price, and obviously he's gonna be charging, he might need 130 units. I mean, so that's what we're looking at. So I'm all ears, and I totally agree, and something more concrete.
Yeah, I would just echo, I'm reluctant to really state a position because I don't want to look like I'm trying to influence the boards that would actually be making the decisions. If it's just the Board of Selectmen considering the application so he can begin the process of presenting to the boards that would make those decisions, then I'm okay with that. It's kind of the lesser of all evils approach to this. I agree with Mr. Eaton. I'm concerned, we're talking about the need for a safety substation in that area already because of the population growth in North Wilmington. We just heard Reading Municipal talking tonight about the need for a substation because the one that supports that part of town is at the end of its useful life. So to add another 100+ units onto that situation, I would want to make sure that, the town is not taking on any additional burden. I'm also concerned about the lack of sewer, I think, in that area and how that would be addressed, again, so that it wouldn't impact or so that the town wouldn't be assuming that cost in any way. And I'm also concerned, just given the visuals that he brought and kind of seeing how his other properties are built, as to what the zoning board would ultimately decide if it's 3+ stories. We just kind of went through that with another building in that area that wasn't acceptable. So I have some concerns, but I also agree, I like the idea that it would get us out of worrying about 40B. So I'm not completely closed to the idea. I just want more information, and I want to make sure that, the impact to the town is going to be minimal on the other end of it when they're actually developing it.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I agree. I think more information is needed. And I heard him pretty plainly that he said 120 units, or even lower than that, not 130. And he also mentioned about the sewer line, trying to get a grant from the state to work that in. I almost think I would agree with Mr. Eaton, and I know you didn't go and make it a formal motion, but make a motion to have our town manager, Jeff Hull, and Valerie Gingrich proceed with further discussions with the developer so that we can keep this moving, this process going, with the understanding that you know, I would like to see it 108 units or 110 units, not so much 120, but so that we can continue the process and not just drop it for another time, because we can't really do that at this point. We don't want to fall below our 10% level. So that's a motion.
Thank you. I'll take that as a motion.
Yep.
Mr. Kyra, is there a second?
So I'll second that.
Second.
How about a little discussion?
Sure, absolutely.
Obviously, I'm not looking to endorse the project right now. I mean, we're gonna just instruct the town manager to sit down with the developer and talk to him and report back to us. So I wanna make it clear, I'll support that, but I'm not supporting and I see everyone's head up and down, so I'm on the same page as that.
I would just like to add, if we could also, I think I might have said this, but I don't know at this point, the North Wilmington train station, I know he had mentioned something about developing that area to make, because that train station stop right now has some stuff that needs addressing, that we've been trying to get the MBTA to address, if that's something that he's also open to exploring, because obviously if he's adding 100 commuters or 50 commuters or whatever the case may be, it would be nice if he had the ability to help shore up that train station a little bit more than it currently is.
I think, once again, it all goes back to Eli's, the ownership. As we were talking, I'm sure there's gonna be a commercial component, and talking about that area that they were gonna develop. He's gonna have to go back and say, geez, the town's looking to do 120, but you know they're gonna ask more money, and then he's gonna come back and say, I'm gonna need more than 120 units, if that's all you're looking to do housing. I just bring that up, that's all, and I agree.
Well, I think we've, certainly, we all can agree we need affordable housing, and this
Yep.
seems like an option that's been presented to us. We ought to, I agree, we ought to instruct the manager to have preliminary conversations to find out more information, like some of my colleagues have said, and report back to this board so that we can proceed from there. Whether it's him making his way through the regulatory process, perhaps the possibility of a public hearing in the future. As soon as we have more information, we can make an informed decision.
So I think this will be helpful in the sense that my understanding is he was looking to get a sense of whether the idea, which was really all it is at this point, is, you know, dead on arrival, and if it is, he's not looking to try to pursue it against the will of the town. He'd move on. It sounds like, from what I'm hearing, there's an interest in continuing to explore it and getting more detail, and if that's the case, we can have the conversation, Valerie and I can have the conversation with him. Just to be clear, though, ultimately, if this is to be a LIP program, the Board of Selectmen will have to agree to sign off on the application that goes to DHCD. So there will be a point in time when that will need to happen in order for the other steps to follow. If, you know, if this is to be considered.
Is there any other further discussion? I want to just take a pause, and Mr. Manager mentioned it, if there's anybody who's adamantly opposed that we look into this, then now would be the time, based on the information we have now. Okay. So we have a motion and a second. All those in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you.
Okay. Next, the board to consider establishing a committee to explore a new senior center / community center.
Mr. Holly, you want to start us off?
Sure. So I know Selectman O'Mahony has talked about looking to establish another committee, and I did speak with Selectman O'Mahony and just express my, I guess, reservations about establishing a committee specifically for this purpose. I think I have a few different concerns. One is we have a permanent building committee that's sole purpose really is to look at different buildings that either need to be rehabbed or replaced. The permanent building committee was involved in many years ago the high school, at the time the new high school wing that was added on the Adams Street side to the old high school, was then more recently involved in the the new high school that ultimately came to pass. So that's a committee of people who are really tasked with looking at buildings. One of the concerns I also have is that by setting up a committee specifically for the senior center, we could go down the road of having other groups say, well, then we should set up a committee to look at the Wildwood School, or we should set up a committee to any number of different buildings that are being considered for future development. And I think we're on a slippery slope here of kind of getting into somewhat of a chaotic situation where we've got multiple committees that ultimately have to be staffed by personnel either in my office or elsewhere, or certainly attended by whether it's George Hooper, myself, Valerie, to provide information. So that is another concern. And I think, as I understand it, the real, and I could be wrong, but my understanding is the real issue or goal is to ensure that the voices of the seniors are heard with respect to the desire to have a new senior center. And I think that's a valid concern, and there are opportunities to do that either through this upcoming meeting that is slated to happen with the school committee, the Board of Selectmen, the Finance Committee, and the Facilities Committee. That's certainly an opportunity for seniors or any other group of individuals that are interested in a particular piece of property, particular building, to make their case, so to speak. So those are some of the concerns that I have about the creation of another committee.
Thank you.
Can I just ask a question?
Go ahead.
I think we should just be focusing on a senior center, but can someone tell me and give me the definition? It says a committee to explore new senior center then / community center.
Sure.
Are we talking about combination of youth with seniors? I think that's what you mentioned at one time?
Can I?
Sure, yes, this was
So
a
since
this was a
this
request
is-
from Mr.
Yeah,
O'Mahony.
since this was
so-
my request, if I could just explain. I had asked for this to be put on the agenda tonight because I feel like, not to get punny at 10 o'clock at night, but the slippery slope of committees, I think, was created with the ice rink committee. And I don't say that as an attack to the need for an ice rink. We've created a committee for a building, for a need that at this moment we don't have the ability to enact without going back to town meeting, which is the ice rink committee / recreation committee, although I'm the only one who refers to it as that. What I asked was, we have another need. You know, the Wildwood School is already being addressed through the school committee advocating for what the school's facilities needs are and continue to be. We have an ice rink committee to talk about that. I believe, are all advocating for the safety building substation. But what's missing from kind of those priorities, the priority of buildings that we all talk about, and I think it was referred to tonight at one point, you know, that we talked about, you know, senior center, Wildwood School, and administration buildings. The only thing that's not being represented at this point at the same level, in my opinion, is the senior center. It's not just to have the seniors' voices heard, it's also to know what their needs really are. I mean, we can tour the current senior center and be told, you know, it would be great if the kitchen were a little bigger, it would be great if we had a room for this. You know, right now, the seniors are going to the 4th of July building for some of their activities because the parking is so limited to them, that even though their activities are expanding, which is great, and they're more active in the senior center itself, they can't all be there at the same time right now, which is not, it's not the way it should be. The reason it says / community center, Mr. McCoy, is because I don't want this to be, we're pitting groups against each other. I'm not saying this because I think that everyone who wants an ice rink in town should now automatically have disdain towards seniors, or that seniors should automatically be blaming the ice rink committee for why there's not a new senior center. I want to keep putting "and" into the conversation. So when we talked about the ice rink, I said / recreation center because in my mind I'm thinking there are other groups in town that might want to use such a facility in the winter months if we had extra space that we could do that. But and I also said at that point when I was advocating to change the name of that committee and to expand the scope, it might just be that it's an ice rink. You know, it might not be that we can do more than an ice rink, but wouldn't it be great to explore that? It's the same idea here. I want to formulate a committee where we can sit down and talk about what are the seniors' needs, what would a senior center look like, and maybe is it the possibility, because the reality is except for tonight when poor Audrey has to be here at 10 o'clock still, most seniors aren't out in the evening as much in the fall and winter months, where it maybe is that there's a space that could be utilized as a community center type place. So it doesn't have to be an or. It could be a senior center that would have the space and ability to be a family center at night, to be a community center in the evenings or on the weekends. It doesn't have to be exclusively for seniors necessarily. It might be the same thing as the ice rink, that we decide we have a plan that makes sense that would be exclusively used for the seniors. Or it might be something where the space is available that we're gonna open it up to other groups at certain periods of time. So that's why that slash is kind of in there. But I really just want to be able to sit down at a table on a regular basis, like we're doing for other facilities in town, and say, what are your needs? What are your wants? What do you know, what would be in the best case scenario, what are you looking for? What's available to us? And I think part of that's gonna come from this big meeting, this facilities meeting, to be able to decide that, because again, it's the domino effect. You know, it might be that we have to address the schools because then there's a school building that makes sense to convert into a senior center or a community center. It might be that there's another building in town that's available that would make sense to renovate for the senior center. I don't know any of that, and I'm not proposing any of that. I'm just saying that discussion deserves the same amount of time and resources as an ice rink committee does. And that's why I wanted it on the agenda. Because I understand we have limited resources, we have limited time, but I think we can stretch it a little bit more to fit one more meeting in a month so that the seniors feel like we're not ignoring the need for a new senior center at this point. So that's all I'm asking for.
Mr. Eaton?
Yeah, so I know, I can't remember, Mr. Chair, if it was the meeting that we had in mid-August or if it was the early September one, but you had cautioned, as you had observed, as Ms. O'Mahony has pointed out, that the discussion about that surrounds the build-up to a facilities master plan discussion has been framed in such a way where it's certain groups are competing against each other. And I believe that it was your intent in scheduling this meeting, and at the time you had said, in either mid-August or early September, that this was just going to be the first one with the school committee and the finance committee and the facilities master plan committee and the board of selectmen. And I believe it was your intent to, step one, let's assess our needs. So let's have the different infrastructure needs that have been identified by the facilities master plan committee, present a case to the town so that each individual resident could have an assessment. If you're not going to the senior center on a regular basis, you can at least deal with, you can have available to you some of the limitations that are there. Issues with the Wildwood, issues with the schools, same with, DPW's on that list as well, town hall, and the library as well, to educate folks so that then the next step becomes, how do we sequence improving our infrastructure? A lot of our buildings were built that we're still using in the post-93 era, as the population in town really exploded in the 50s and 60s. And what we're seeing now is a lot of the buildings that we have are showing some signs of aging, and they're reaching the end of their useful life. I think that, and I hope that that the meeting that we were hoping to have, that was, I think, it was rescheduled for circumstances beyond anybody's control or wishes. And I think that was the right call with the school committee and the finance committee and the facilities master plan committee and us. I hope that is the first one, and I hope that the Elderly Services Commission can be included in a subsequent and shortly thereafter meeting as well. I'm just reading from the inhabitant bylaws regarding the Elderly Services Commission. It was formed for the purpose of coordinating and carrying out programs designed to meet the problems of aging in coordination with the programs of the Department of Elder Affairs, consisting of 7 citizens of the town appointed by the town manager for terms not to exceed 3 years for any member. Goes on and says that the Elderly Services Commission shall establish policy recommendations for the conduct of the elderly services programming. Such policy recommendations, with the consent of the town manager, shall be implemented by the Elderly Services Administrator. I'll point out that the last 2 monthly meetings for the Elderly Services Commission in August and September have included the need for a new senior center on their agendas, and they've discussed this. I think that the Elderly Services Commission is the folks in town that have, along with with Ms. Marciello, the best grip and handle on what the needs and the limitations of the current senior center are. And I think that we need to hear from them. They're the folks that have been appointed, that have been serving for some time, to make the recommendations as to what's going on with the senior center and the Department of Elderly Services. Those are the folks that I want to hear of. Having a senior center that's also a community center, that to me has some appeal to it, but there certainly seems to be that there might be some obstacles or some reasons why that might not make sense. I don't know, and I want to hear from the Elderly Services Commission as to whether or not that makes sense and what doesn't. I want to know from the Elderly Services Commission which of the spots that could actually be the location of a new senior center makes the most sense. What are the pros and cons for each of them? Those are the folks that I want to hear from. Ms. O'Mahony, at the beginning of when you were speaking, you mentioned that that we've been forming a lot of committees, and that is something I want to be mindful of as well. I mean, we voted to form an economic development committee in mid-January, and it took us 17 weeks to finalize the membership of that. And we voted to form a rink and an indoor recreational facility committee, and it took us 7 weeks to just complete the membership of that committee. And once the committee is formed, they then have to coordinate schedules as to when the first meeting is going to be, and they have to organize, and just tonight, we saw the Economic Development Committee again, which was formed almost exactly 9 months ago, give us their purpose and their scope of what they're going to be doing. I don't want to wait 9 months. I would like to hear by the end of 2019 from the Elderly Services Commission so that they can come in and they can say, listen, this is what we want to be able to do. This is the strengths and the constraints and the limitations that we have. I think those are the folks that are in the best position to educate us, and more importantly, the residents of town, as to what the need is and where folks in town want to do it. Their meetings are at 1:30 in the afternoon at the senior center. It's like custom built for responsive government. It's right where people are during a time of day where people are there. So it's direct engagement. Those are the folks I want to hear from.
Absolutely, thank you.
I agree with Mr. Eaton. I mean, the bottom line is, I think we should focus on one thing and one thing only, is the senior center. I mean, we don't want to make it sound like, oh, the seniors, or they go to bed at 7 o'clock at night and they don't want to drive at night. I'm 60 years old. I'd be considered a senior. You can ask my wife or anybody. I'm not in bed at 7:30 at night. I'm out driving. I'm up well later than 7:30 at night, and I see some folks that are nodding their head in the back. I think we should just focus on one thing, a senior center, period. I just disagree. I don't think we should be trying to talk, well, about a community center. I mean, I did grasp the idea when you said about a hockey rink and a, indoor facility. And I agree with that, I just don't think we should be muddying anything up. I agree with Mr. Eaton. I do think that the seniors should be basically telling us what we want. But once again, I'd be considered a senior. And I'm out and about at nighttime, and I see folks out there as well. So I think we should just stay focused. It's a senior center. Just let them do what they need to do there. Support it, move on with it. And, and I'm all for the kids and the youth. Believe me, I'm trying to do what I can too as a senior citizen. But we have a lot of ball fields. We did Uintals Park, and they did a fantastic job. How about stay focused? Keep your eye on the ball. Senior center, period. That's what I think we should do.
So that's great, but I guess I would defer to Ms. Masiello at this point with why the Elder Services Commission might not be the same thing as formulating a senior center committee through this group. Because that was what was brought up to me on Thursday, and that's what I had the conversation with her about. And my concern is we're now asking the Elder Services Commission to basically formulate a plan for a new senior center, which I believe is outside the scope. What Jonathan just read, what Mr. Eaton just read, they're talking about programming. And I don't know how they're gonna develop, plans of what buildings would be available or what would make the most sense for seniors. It might have come up in the last 2 meetings because seniors have gone to those meetings to request it. I'm just concerned that we're asking them to basically do more than is in the scope of what their commission actually is.
want to make sure we give Mr. Kyra an
Yeah,
opportunity.
Yeah, thank you. I too agree with Mr. Eaton's assessment, and I think that the Elderly Services Commission is the ideal committee to address this issue. We do have a facilities master plan. I know it's a little bit, it's 3 years old at this point in time, but they also address this issue as well. And I agree with Ms. McCoy. This should just be a senior center, not a community center. I don't know how you would distinguish between the two. I mean, kids are on vacation during the summer months, so do they come in the morning until night when the seniors are there, or do you just want it to be a senior center? I just think, as you say, we should focus in on the senior center. I do take a little bit of offense to Ms. O'Mahony's comment that we're ignoring the seniors. I don't believe we are. We've appropriated $10,000 in the Public Buildings Department fund. We've also received another $30,000 from our state legislation, our delegation, with $40,000 going into the senior center for needed renovations. So to say that this board is ignoring the seniors is off base as far as I'm concerned. I've gone to the senior center a few times, and I know their needs, and I'm hoping that we can address those needs. Regarding the rink committee is very well aware of the needs of the town. We've discussed that, and we're looking at it as a private-public venture, not just a public, not just for the public. We're looking at private ways to address that issue with the rink for the youth and for the elderly who like to skate as well. But I don't think we need a separate committee at this point in time. I think we should, as you said, Mr. Chair, go through the process. We have a meeting coming up on the 28th, I believe, that may address
We're going to make a big announcement
different.
shortly.
Oh, I'm sorry, did
No,
I?
it's okay.
Did I say something?
No.
But as far as I'm concerned, I don't think another committee is needed. I would agree with Mr. Hull's assessment at this point in time.
Thank you, yes, so Mr. Kyra did mention it, and a couple things I want to clarify. Number one is, Mr. Eaton mentioned it also, we did postpone the meeting that we were scheduled and long anticipated on September 30th for obvious reasons. I don't like to use this word, but I will. I asked Jeff to cancel the meeting, so if anyone wants to point blame, they can point it at me. Given the circumstances that we found out Mr. Costello's services were going to be that evening, I, as the chair of this board, could not see myself calling a meeting and having people choose between the services and a meeting. I thought that at that moment, we needed to be a community first and not focus so much on our town government. And I'm grateful that we had the opportunity to do that and mourn such a great man and town employee. So that left us in a situation where we now had to try to reschedule 26 elected and appointed officials. Not an easy task. I applaud Jeff. He's been working very diligently on trying to get everybody together. There's been several dates we've looked at in the course of October. We thought we were really close a few times, but we were going to announce tonight under announcements that we hope to have everyone here with us on October 28th, which is a Monday night, regularly scheduled Board of Selectmen meeting, where we could, we think we have the majority of the folks slated to be there, committed to being there, and another opportunity for residents to be here and hear the presentation as well. And so, again, a long-anticipated meeting, a much-needed conversation, but I'd be lying to you if I didn't tell you that some folks were calling me crazy for even trying to have this meeting, because you can see that leading up to this meeting, that there are people obviously trying to, that are very passionate about their position, and we can all appreciate that. But what I don't want is people to, I would hope, no one would make a decision unless they heard all the informed information that the Facilities Master Plan Committee spent a lot of time putting together that report, and they've yet to be able to present it in a public forum, so we want to make sure we give them the opportunity to present their findings, and then have each of the committees give some input. So I've tried to really hold off on my opinions of what we think we should do in terms of some of the projects in the Facility Master Plan, because I still want to hear what the folks have to say. And I hope everyone will keep an open mind. Again, we're going to try to schedule it for October 28th. There'll be very little other Board of Selectmen issues on the agenda. One other kind of really important thing at the beginning, perhaps with the Girl Scouts, and then all focused on the facilities master plan. So I think it'll be a good opportunity to hear the findings, to be presented with some facts, and let all of the appointed and elected officials have input, and then obviously the residents, so that we can get feedback from them on that night and days going forward. And I would imagine, as I said in prior meetings, that this will be the very first of multiple conversations.
Mr. Chair, can I just ask, is the Elder Services Commission invited to that meeting?
Everyone in town is invited to that meeting.
So they've been invited to the meeting
They
as
have
well?
not formally been invited. Tonight is the first night. Up until today, we were still, literally, this afternoon, finalizing to make sure we could get everybody to be in the room at that time. So certainly, again, I don't want to, I want people to come, I want people to give their input, but I also want people to be mindful that we're going to hear from the Facilities Master Plan first, probably the school committee, the finance committee, the Board of Selectmen, and then obviously have some conversations around their findings in addition to some public input, as we would have at all of our meetings. So certainly, all are welcome to answer your question.
Just a point of clarification, Mr. Chair, is it the intent to, at a later date, have the Elderly Services Commission as a commission before the Board of Selectmen?
I think that if they would be willing to do that, that would be awesome. I think they have a lot of valuable input from folks that I would love to hear. I'm looking at the minutes of a recent meeting of the Elderly Commission where they talked about a new senior center. They had a wonderful presentation. I had the opportunity to watch it on TV. They also talked about kitchen and building renovations and a number of other items. And this was one of two meetings that I was able to catch on WCTV in which there was healthy discussion around a new senior center. Those are things I'd like to have come before this board. I want to make sure that everybody is presented with all the facts so that if it's time came in the future at town meeting where we were asked to vote on a particular project, we could all make an educated decision. And so that's my goal. I know that this has become quite the task to put together this meeting, but I look forward to the discussion, and we got to start somewhere. So I'm hoping October 28th will be the time where we can start that conversation.
Okay, I know we have 2 meetings scheduled in November, and we're going to discuss when we're meeting in December, but can we ask the Elderly Services Commission to be a part of one of those 3 meetings?
I think that would be a great idea. Is there any further discussion here? I know we kind of got derailed there by October 28th, but it is important.
Well, I think the 28th is perfect. It's my 30th wedding anniversary, so I'll spend it here at the
Cheryl
meeting.
will
My
be
wife
here. We
will
should
be-
invite Cheryl. I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
she's definitely invited.
Sounds like a plan.
Congratulations. Okay, so we have Terry, absolutely.
So, I'm sorry, just with the conversation, just because my name was brought up, so I thought I'd just kind of, the commission, our commission has in the past 2 meetings, has discussed the need, and we were very, very fortunate, actually with Audrey here to my side, did bring up the conversation of a need for a new senior center. So the commission has brought it up and has feel the need for, not only for the need to expand because we're getting so large, the issue with parking, but also that the need, just as you're saying, Mr. Chairman, the need to really get a true feeling for this facilities master plan as to the true goal, and as to how, as you probably have heard in the meeting, how all of you feel about that facilities master plan and what you see as the goal for the next thing to happen as the senior center to progress. I know I understand about the permanent building committee, and I have a question to ask. Is there a possibility of having anyone from that committee to be able to be sitting as a part of our commissioners' meeting, if it be the person in charge or whatever, or being a part of our discussion, seeing as that committee is already developed, having them sit with us?
Yeah, if I may, Jeff, I'll answer for that. I would imagine that any board that volunteers their time here for the betterment of our town would have the authority to invite whoever they would like to their meeting to answer questions or give a presentation or discuss a particular topic, so I would encourage you to do that. I
Okay.
think that would be very appropriate, very
Okay.
appropriate.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. Jeff, do you have something you want to add?
No, I think we're good.
Okay, I want to be mindful that we do have a board member with an item to consider. Would anybody like to offer a motion?
I'll make the motion to
Okay.
establish a committee to explore a new senior center.
Motion's been made. Just to be clear, new senior center, are we gonna go based on how it reads, new senior center /
No,
community center?
I'm
Withdrawn.
omitting the community center.
Okay. We have a motion, is there a second? Seeing none, the motion fails. Okay, our next board to consider?
Next board to consider is the meeting schedule for December. Typically, the board meets just once in December, and the date that I would propose would be December 16th.
Does anybody have anything that they can see as preventing us from getting together on the 16th of December? Okay. Anybody want to offer a motion to make December 16th, Monday, September 6th, December 16th, our meeting of the month of December?
So, second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? It's unanimous. Okay, we're on to public comment. Yes.
Mr. Chairman, Suzanne Sullivan, 60 Norman Street. A couple of things on the meeting tonight. So, I just want to remind the board the purpose of water protection land is to protect our drinking water. I also want to let the board know that on the Wildwood Street substation in the past, that there's been releases of PCBs, and it used to be actually in the 21E system. I don't know what the status of that is these days. I used to do file reviews all the time. I don't know. It's been a long time since I reviewed any of those files. So my point is, they may have cleaned it up, it may not be cleaned up. My point is that substations can have releases. This is our groundwater protection district, and this land was bought to protect our water. So even if a fire station went there, any of those things have to be really taken into consideration. That's why it's Article 97 land, because that land is used for a public purpose. I mean, I guess you could say a substation could be a public purpose. I guess you could say a fire station is a public purpose. The school's a public purpose. There's a lot of public purposes. But for that public purpose is to protect our drinking water. If you keep whittling away at those parcels of land, there is no more land to protect the water supply. That's why it was taken in 1938. I didn't know that it extended that far in. I was kind of shocked myself because I'm very familiar with that parcel of land. So I just wanted to let the board know that. I do have a solution. It's called Buy Sharapis Farm, but I don't know what the status of that is. It seems like we're scrambling all the time to find land for our municipal uses, and once that farm's gone, that's it. I mean, we're looking at how hard it is right now as this town grows, and this town will grow, in 20, 30 years. That's it, there's nothing. So I strongly suggest this board really take a step forward on Sharapis Farm. Because if you think it's difficult now with all these decisions, think of what you're leaving the future Board of Selectmen, your future children, the future generations have to deal with. So I would strongly suggest buying a farm. So that's that. So the other thing is North Wilmington. I think that you don't understand totally the whole process here. if you give your blessing, you are basically permitting, you are the permitting authority. Not ultimately, but what you're doing is you're putting forward a 40B that has the potential of not adhering to our bylaws. So we have bylaws in North Wilmington. We have a commercial district in Wilmington. So what the 40B will do is it will not adhere. Residential is not allowed in a commercial district that's zoned there. So what you're saying is the heck with the bylaw, we want housing there. And I think if you're gonna do that, then you wanna ask the people of North Wilmington whether or not that they think that that's a good idea or not. I don't think that's a big idea before you keep going so far forward that you leave this guy down the road and then you're just gonna rip the rug out from underneath them. Don't you think it's a good idea maybe to ask like the people that live there what they might like?
Well, if I could just interrupt you for 1 minute. I mean, in full disclosure, we've been very transparent about our dealings, or conversations, I should say, with this gentleman. We've had 2 posted meetings in which this was gonna be on the agenda to be discussed. So we've been very public about it.
I had to wait until 10:30 because I'm a real dedicated citizen that cares about my town and cares about my neighborhood. I just waited until 10:30 just to be able to say anything. You expect that everybody's supposed to be like that? What I'm saying is that you should open up the door and ask residents how they feel about it. Now, I know for a fact that there's people in North Wilmington that's concerned. We have, and I also want to point out that we've passed several bylaw changes and land zoning changes that allow residential uses without commercial use. So basically what we're doing is eliminating our commercial district. And we don't have a big commercial district. I'm not talking industrial, I'm talking about from mom and pop stores, small stores. We don't have a large area in this town. And we're struggling, as you know, in economic development and how to get that to push forward. I think that's a concern. And I know Valerie's here, you can ask Valerie as far as the local initiative projects go. I don't think you can have a commercial component. So you would have to do some work there. I'm pretty sure I looked it up, that you can't have a 40B a lip and have commercial in that development. So I think that the town needs to do so, because I hear people saying, oh, we'll have some commercial in there, and those stores won't go away, like EJ's or Sunnyside Cafe or any of those places. I'm not sure that's true.
Again, I can only go based on the conversations we've had, which have been both in public, here, live on television. And again, I think if you, I know you were here, you saw we voted to instruct the manager to have conversations so that we could pursue an idea.
To ask the people of North Wilmington, I mean, that maybe we can work together instead of, working apart like what had to happen with the detox, and ask people to come in and give, what their vision of North Wilmington might be.
Well, with all due respect, that conversation was attempted a few years ago with Valerie Gingrich when she had a forum. It was an informal opportunity for people to come in. She was simply looking to solicit information from people as to what they thought. And it was, people were even instructed not to have the cookies and whatever water that she gave, because I guess there was some devious intent behind her meeting. And my understanding was that at the end of that conversation, people said, we don't want any change. We want this space as it is today. So how do we have a conversation like that when that's the response?
I wasn't there, and I never even knew about that meeting. If I had known about that meeting, I would have been there. I don't know where I was or what planet I was on at that time, but I wasn't there. And
well,
if I
it was
had
certainly
been there,
not for lack of trying, and I can't specifically cite the efforts that were made to make it public, but there were certainly a number of people there, and it was publicized, and again, that's the response we got. Now, that was 4 years ago, or whatever it was, so maybe people's sentiments have changed, but
I think they have. The conversations that I've had with a lot of people in the North Wilmington area is that people do want to see change. People have a vision that they have down there, and I'm not saying that this local initiative project wouldn't be part of that vision. All I'm saying is that I think that it might be a good idea to ask the people of North Wilmington. I mean, we're the ones that will be directly affected by it.
Mr.
So, Mr. Chair, Ms. Sullivan, we did have some discussion tonight about making sure that a public hearing or public meeting that we do have, if we do end up receiving an application, is with something more concrete than we have. You've mentioned a few points right now that are still uncertain, and I don't want to have a public meeting where people leave here with more questions than they arrived with, because that's just going to make frustration build, and it's going to lead to people being uncertain, which leads to more divisiveness. And what I want is, if an application is submitted, which is still preliminary, all we've done is we've instructed the town manager and our planning director to have a conversation with Princeton Properties. That doesn't mean that they're going to submit an application. We've all indicated our reservations as well as our openness to at least continue the discussion. If an application is received, that at some point, just based on what Ms. Gingrich said earlier, would be a lot more concrete. So the residents in North Wilmington and all over town, if they have questions, they will actually be able to have those questions answered. So they can actually make the decision as to whether or not this is something that's we want to support, this is something we don't want to support. That's a lot of what, at least I took away from the discussion, is we want to facilitate a discussion, but at this point, it's really just too amorphous to be having it. I understand there's anxiety because it's the unknown, but assuming an application does come, which is an assumption at this point, we can't answer the questions because we don't know what they are, and we're not sure that Princeton Property knows at this point. So.
I understand that, but I guess when I look at planning, you know, like when you just talked about the anxiety of the unknown, that's why you have planning and that's why you have zoning. And that's why there's anxiety, is because this project that's coming forward does away with that zoning. It does, so we have a commercial zone down there, and you're gonna do away with that and put, you know, dense residential development. And I don't think that you should be planning based on the profit of a developer. I think that when you plan, you want to plan according to what the community wants, what the community vision is. And that's why I have a problem with the process that's taking place now. And I'm not saying that it's not, you know, dense residential development shouldn't be there. What I'm saying is I think that when you do planning, it shouldn't be a gun to your head or based in this type of manner, that you should be more thoughtful about it and ask the residents what they think.
Okay. Just if I could steal a little bit more time, Mr. Chair, I think everything that you just said about a project that's defeating local zoning, I agree with the principle of, but we're all operating under the cloud of 40B, and what the state says is if you don't hit that 10% threshold, your zoning goes out the window. So really what I think that we're in a position is we're kind of picking our poison. Do we want 120 or 108 units there? And maybe we can get some kind of sewer and maybe some subsidy for a fire substation. Or at least the first project that was proposed for that location when I got elected was for 365 units. Now, again, whether or not either of those are feasible.
That was just ridiculous. That was a 40R. I mean.
What I'm saying is, we don't know what the final application will be if it comes to that point. But what we're in a position, because of the whole 40B scheme, because of the state's approach to affordable housing, is not, well, let's value and protect as sanctimonious local control and local zoning. Because the whole idea behind 40B is to skirt local zoning.
Right,
So we're
right now, that's the whole point, Jonathan, is that right now the board is looking to allow that process to go forward because of the fear factor. The 300
we're just looking to continue the conversation.
But the 385 units would have to be through a 40R, and in order to do a 40R, the Board of Selectmen in the town need to do the zoning. So it's not a 40B. It's a whole different process. The town actually does the zoning itself. And that wouldn't have happened. So you shouldn't even mention that because it sounds, that's kind of like a fear factor. That just wouldn't happen. I mean, and I think Valerie can vouch for that, all right? That was a crazy idea that someone came forward with, but the town goes forward with the 40R. You are the one that actually does it, not the developer, all right?
But I guess the point being, if the town continues to say no every time a proposal is put forward, there will be a point where a 40B, whether it's there or someplace else in town that's undesirable to somebody, is going to happen. And at that point, the town is going to have no leverage or very little leverage, far less leverage, I would submit, than in at least considering a proposal like this. So we can either continue to kick the can down the road and hope that everybody overlooks Wilmington for 40Bs, or we can try to at least consider whether this is perhaps a lesser of other evils.
Well, I agree with that, but I guess what I'm saying is why not include the public up front instead of waiting till you already have somebody that has plans and then, you know, present it to the public when the horse has already been let out of the barn. I guess what I'm saying is I don't necessarily disagree with that. And I think that that's actually a possibility. But why not include the public? I mean, this is a commercial district. This isn't just, you know, another piece of land. This is a commercial neighborhood district that it could potentially be transformed into only housing.
Well, if I may interrupt you for a second, I feel compelled to defend this board because we are, in fact, listening to the public. And the public is saying to us that they want more affordable housing and that they don't want a large-scale 40B project to be plopped in an undesirable location. So therefore, the members of this board are listening to options. And tonight, we unanimously voted to have the manager explore an option. That's it. So I take exception to the idea that we're not listening to residents. Residents have been telling us at every forum we go that they want more affordable housing. Here we are exploring affordable housing, and we're being criticized for it.
Right, but no, it's not, first of all, it's not a criticism, it's an ask. Okay, first of all, it's not a criticism, it's an ask. And second of all, residents have also said that they also want viable commercial development. I mean, that's also too. I mean, there's a lot of competing needs here. And what I'm trying to say is that the people in North Wilmington, I think, deserve to be asked what their vision is of that area. Instead of just going down, because once you go there, you're done. That's what I'm saying. I'm not criticizing. I am asking that the people of North Wilmington be included in the process. That's all. And trying to point out why I think that's important.
Okay, thank you. Any other public comment? Okay. Seeing none, we'll move to announcements. Do any board members have an announcement? Mr. Kyra, excuse me, Mr. McCoy.
Yeah, just a couple of quick things. I had the pleasure to go to the candlelight vigil at the town common. It's very touching. You get to see the conversation. I think the town is in the forefront in trying to help with the opioid, and it was very moving, and it was, I think, a wonderful night. Also, as yourself, Mr. Chairman, I was at the Sean Collier dedication just the other day, and the students did a fantastic job out there, and it really looks good. And obviously, we just have to keep his memory alive and just think about all the good things that have happened. And it was just really moving to be there. Thank you.
Both events were well attended. It was a nice event, and yeah, kudos to Joe Wilson, was a student who organized the Sean Collier Memorial event, and what a fine young man he is. And I should also note, sticking with tonight's theme, he's in the Explorer program with the Wilmington Police Department right now. So there's a fine example of a young man who's graduated and come back to see a very worthy project through, and it was nice to be with Sean Collier's family that day, too.
It was very nice.
So thank you. Mr. Kyra?
Yeah. I didn't know really to take this up on the new business or announcements, but we'll try announcements and see how it goes. And I just want to qualify my statement, or soon to be questioned, by stating that our chairman is a teacher at Shawshene Tech, and my niece is a guidance counselor at Shawshene Tech. But I haven't heard from them until recently. But prior to that, I've heard from other residents that for some reason or other, Shawshene Tech, I heard first that they're not being allowed into the middle school to make a presentation to the 8th graders to give them an option to explore the idea of going to the Shawshene Tech. And now I'm hearing that they need permission to go to an assembly from their parents in order to see a presentation by Shawshene Tech. And, you know, this has been going on, I think, for years, where Shawshene Tech's been allowed to go into the 8th grade to have an assembly for the 8th grade class. And it seems like it's being derailed a little bit here. And I know that we have public funds going to Shawshene Tech of over $1 million. And we've been doing this for quite some time. I mean, there are some students that want to take a different pathway, but if they're not given that opportunity, it just doesn't feel right that they're being deprived of that. Do you have any information on that, Mr. Hull, as to why, or who has stopped Shawshene Tech from coming in to make a presentation?
So I did receive an email over the weekend from Dr. Brand, the school superintendent, just noting in the email that he had received, I guess, some feedback from people questioning the change in policy, and he indicated, and I have not had any conversation with him, but in the email he indicated that the assembly will still be permitted, that the only change from past practice is that apparently in the past students were able to participate without a permission slip from their guardian or parent, and now going forward they have to receive, students have to provide that permission slip in advance of this assembly. But that's the only information I have. I don't know what the basis for the change is. I have not spoken to the superintendent.
Okay. Yeah, I just been getting feedback from some residents, as you have, as to why the change has been made, that they can't hold an informational seminar, so, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I can certainly ask the question as to what the basis for the change is. Like I say, I think the email came to me, I don't know, Saturday or Sunday, and
Competition, I guess, right, with other schools. I know that there are private schools that kids go to, private schools as well, and we see our enrollment going down. Maybe they're trying to prevent that enrollment from going down, but I would think that the students would be given an opportunity to see Shawshene Tech.
Any other announcements? I just want to add one announcement myself. Again, so our next Board of Selectmen meeting is Monday, October 28th at 7 p.m. right here in room 9. Our plan right now is to hopefully have the meeting posted well in advance, that it will be taking up the discussion of the facilities master plan and inviting all the parties that were expected to be there at the previously scheduled meeting that had to be canceled. So as soon as we have finalized the details, we will post the meeting, and we would encourage people to attend. Okay, any new business? Seeing none, we'll move into important dates.
important dates: October 16th, the brush drop-off, Old Main Street, 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. October 17th is the next Elderly Services Commission, Bazell Senior Center, 1:30 p.m. October 18th, Carter Lecture Fund, the Workingmen's Band Tribute to Woodstock 50th Anniversary, the middle school, 7 p.m. October 19th, Townwide Flu Clinic, Town Hall Auditorium, 9 a.m. to noon. October 19th, another brush drop-off, Old Main Street, 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. October 21st, Welcome to Wilmington Reception at the library, 6 to 8 p.m. October 22nd, Inhabitant Bylaw Committee meeting, Town Hall, Room 9, 6 p.m. October 22nd, Environmental Protection Agency is having an open house informational meeting at the, is it the middle school still? I think the venue had changed. I think it's
Seems to me,
changed to the high school.
Did we schedule that, or did they schedule it?
No, they scheduled it, but then they changed it. I believe that, I apologize for not catching this earlier, but I believe there was a change. It was originally scheduled for the middle school and is now at the high school, but we'll put this on our webpage. But the meeting is,
You had given us an email saying it has been changed to the high school auditorium.
okay, so it is the high school auditorium. 5:30 PM to 6:45 is the open house. People can come in and ask questions, and then there'll be an informational meeting, 7 PM to 8:30 PM, where there'll be a presentation, and then it'll be open to questions. October 23rd, brush drop-off, Old Main Street, 8 AM to 2 PM. Next Selectmen's meeting, as was noted, the 28th of October, right here, 7 PM. Brush drop-off on October 26th, 9 AM to 4 PM, Old Main Street. October 27th is the Horribles Parade, Rotary Park, 4:30 PM. October 30th, another brush drop-off, Old Main Street, 8 AM to 2 PM. Also on the 30th is the next Economic Development Committee meeting, Room 9, 7 PM. On the 30th is the Ice Rink and Recreation Facilities Committee, Town Hall Auditorium, 7 PM. November 2nd, brush drop-off, Old Main Street, 9 AM to 4 PM. Turn your clocks back on November 3rd, and change your batteries for the change in time. Amen. And then also November 3rd, Harnden Tavern, open house, 2 PM to 4 PM. November 3rd is the Shawshene Tech Community Open House, 2 PM to 4 PM. And then November 4th through December 6th is the curbside collection of yard waste. Also, November 6th is another brush drop-off, Old Main Street, 8 AM to 2 PM. November 9th, brush drop-off, 9 AM to 4 PM. November 11th is the Veterans Day ceremonies, Town Common, 11 AM. Town offices will be closed that day. And then November 12th is another Board of Selectmen's meeting, 7 PM.
Thank you very much. Is there a motion to adjourn? Motion's been made. All in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you and good night, everyone.